Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. It's 7:01. The meeting is duly constituted, a quorum is present, and the first order of business on the agenda is adoption of that agenda. So may I have a motion, please? And a second. Discussion. Peter, I believe we have an on-table item 8A4. It's in front of us. Approval would be to include this on-table item. Any other changes?
And the item is regarding, Mr. Mayor?
The item is regarding a request for decision on engineering of Lions Bay Avenue stairs.
Okay.
So seeing no further ads,
Sorry.
was that a fashionable delay?
Anything else before I spoke up?
Very, very polite, yes.
Kind of later side of the table.
So additional grounds for closing, please.
Yep.
A, 91A, and C, both pertaining to employment.
Labor
issues.
relations, yeah, okay.
E.
Which one's E again?
E is acquisition or disposition of land, etc. F, which is law enforcement.
Land, labor, and legal, so that's pretty much it, yeah, so you covered that.
F is law enforcement.
Okay, law enforcement.
We already have I, which is solicitor-client privilege, and K, which is negotiations, discussions related to the proposed provision of municipal service.
Okay, municipal services. So did everybody get that? In addition to the 91I that's already there, we're also anticipating A, C, E, F, and K. Everybody clear on the reasons for that? Those will, of course, have to be added to the agenda of the closed meeting when that comes. But with those adds, that's it, Peter?
Yep.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor of the agenda as amended and opposed? That carries. Next on the agenda is public participation. Is there a list? Thank you. Mr. Stone, you have 2 minutes to address council on any topic of your choosing.
Thank you. This is a very important topic that not too many people are aware of, but it's real, and you'll probably think that it's, I might not be in my senses, but it's really true. I've met some people who have been adversely affected by the radio waves that emanate from the cell towers, and the federal government, who is making lots of money on the licenses and never with this particular technology. I'm talking about cell phones and internet, wireless, fidelity, etc. But people are now being seriously adversely affected by the waves. It's no longer a small one tower every once in a while, but if you ever look on your internet using a cable, you will see that there are literally thousands of them all over the country. And the more exposure a person gets to these microwaves, they do affect their health and welfare. I've heard that there is a move to put a tower into Lions Bay, and I would strongly suggest that you review the adverse effects, the medical effects, and studies that have been done. Most of the studies are independent studies, the federal government studies, because they want to collect the money, are biased, and they say, oh, everything's okay, but it isn't. And this has been known at least since 1960, so we're 58 years in counting, and the government hasn't done anything, mainly, I believe, because of the fiscal money involved. And I would strongly urge you to look at the medical studies, independent ones that have been done. And I could say a lot more, but how are we doing for time, there, Fred?
6 seconds.
Okay, that's good timing.
Yeah, so if you need more information, I have some. I just noticed there was a meeting tonight, so I didn't bring it with me. But
Well, not to worry, thanks. Typically, as you know, we don't comment on these things, but I can assure you that it is true that Lions Bay is considering a cell tower project for all sorts of good reasons, money being one of them. One of the conditions is that the proponent will be required to provide independent safety reporting, so that everybody during the consultation period is fully aware of what the health implications are. So we're not going to pretend it doesn't exist. We all want to know answers to those questions. So
Okay.
thanks for bringing it to our
So should I
attention.
submit what I have, or are you doing independent research on it?
Well, I would absolutely like to see what you have. So please provide it to the office, and it'll
Thank you.
go into the project. Thanks. That being the only public participation on the agenda, we'll now move to delegations. The first being Paul Kubik on planned work on the Lions Trail by the BC Mountaineering Club. Welcome.
Thank
You have 10 minutes.
Councillors. So I'm with the BCMC, I'm the Cabins and Trails Director, and our club has been working on the trail, or built the trail, in the 60s and 1970s, early 70s. I personally was up at the West Lion when I was about 10 years old, and my personal involvement has been with trail maintenance probably since the mid-1980s. So what I've found is that the trail is deteriorating. It has been for a number of years. There's shortcutting of switchbacks higher up above the creek crossing. And volunteer efforts have been kind of dwarfed by the amount of work that's required to actually maintain the trail. Recently, the BC Mountaineering Club has been working with members of Lions Bay Search and Rescue. We do chainsaw work, brush cutting to maintain the trails, even though with additional resources, we're still far behind what really needs to be done to be maintaining a hiking trail. Now, the trail is designated as a recreational trail under Section 56 of the Forest and Range Practices Act. That means that it's the Forest Service is authorized to fund and maintain the trail, but in reality they don't have the resources and the funds. So the BCMC has been authorized by the Sea to Sky Recreation Officer to perform that maintenance and enhancement work. So we established a proposal which was circulated to council, I believe. We would like to establish a vision for the trail in collaboration with Lions Bay and other parties. Common vision, parking and sanitation issues would be our preference to be discussed as well. But our vision is to restore the trail, make improvements, and reduce the annual maintenance to a level that is sustainable by volunteers. So the proposal I circulated, it's ambitious, it's of a scale that's far beyond what a volunteer could possibly do, a volunteer group such as the club. And so we have created the idea to have a charitable foundation receive grants, and that money would be dispersed to a recreational trail building firm. And I've approached the group that's currently working on the House Sound Crest Trail improvement from Cypress Bowl. And that principal's name is Jeremy Powers of Rare Earth Recreational Trail Builders. So we did a site visit in December, and we looked at one aspect of that proposal, which was I broke up the trail into sections, which I thought would be achievable on a year-to-year basis. There were essentially 7 sections I broke the trail up into. The primary access road is under the Section 56 trail designation, and it proceeds from the Sunset Drive gate. That's also a road that's used by Lions Bay for servicing Magnesia Creek water intake. So, and that part of the road is in very good shape, but above that we anticipate some ditching work could be done, although it's not my intention to fund that from the charitable foundation. So I was actually going to request if we might get some funding from within Lions Bay to do that in discussion with you, of course according to the vision that you establish is what you want for the trail. So the section above that, there was some work done in about 2 or 3 years ago to, there was an open area that had a slide hazard associated with it. And that's in pretty good shape. The section beyond that is about 1 kilometer to the turnoff to the creek. The trail there drops down to the creek and crosses on a log which was augmented a few years ago, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, by Lions Bay Search and Rescue using money from a bequeathment. A handrail was put up and a steel deck put in. We weren't anticipating to do any work on that section probably for a few years. And beyond that, we're just anticipating next year or this year doing minor maintenance. But down the road, we anticipate we might want to have an excavator on the other side to do kind of work that they're doing up at Cypress Bowl. That kind of work, basically it's building about a meter wide trail bed with ditching, and it's a hiking trail. It's not meant for ATVs, but I understand there may be some people in Lions Bay in the search and rescue that might deem it useful to have ATV access for rescues, although that's something that they would have to expand on. So at this point, we're just talking about a hiking trail improvements, because the area beyond the bridge is sort of in mixed condition. In some places it's well switchbacked, it just needs sort of annual maintenance, but higher up it's severely eroded due to shortcutting, so there could be some extensive work. But of course, from my estimates here, that's going to be a very expensive proposition. So the funding is going to be the problem for us, but we're committed to finding that funding. We're not asking Lions Bay at this point for any money. We just basically want to present our vision, have your feedback, and see if you can support us in several ways. What we're asking for is to grant BCMC access to the gate on Sunset Drive, so a key or whatever. And then we'd like to ask you how to best accommodate project parking requirements, if there are any, and how to address sanitation issues. We could, for example, propose to have a outhouse facility put in higher up between your Magnesia and Harvey Creek watersheds in the Alberta Creek watershed, which I don't believe is a water source for drinking. Perhaps position an outhouse facility in that area. And then also we're requesting you consider granting funding for sections of the road part of the trail to improve drainage and prevent runoff that is actually carrying away roadbed material, and how to communicate project work to Lions Bay residents. That concludes my requests or my presentation. Thank you very much.
That's great, thanks. I'm sure, I certainly have questions, and I'm sure council does too, so I'll open it up to the table.
When you talk about sanitation issues, you mean sanitation for users of the trail or for the project crew doing work on the trail while you're doing the work?
Yeah, that's a bit ambiguous, I guess, what I stated.
I was just curious.
I think definitely for the project crew.
Yeah.
But long term, if it fits with a vision for the community, we'd like to see enhanced sanitation facilities. So it might be that the way to achieve that is to build a facility. Then I'm told they cost $10,000 to $15,000 to construct.
Well, touching on that one, I mean, that's one that we all flagged around the table from a technical perspective. It's true that Alberta Creek is not currently used for drinking water, but that's not to say that it wouldn't be in the future. We have a water license on the creek, in fact, our biggest single water license, and it would be slated for deep wells if deep wells ever came up. So any sanitation facility would need to be fairly carefully designed. On the other hand, we're very conscious that we need to, this is a technical term, we need to stop hikers crapping in the watershed. So it may be that by putting a facility at the gate and at a designated spot in the backcountry, we might actually be able to address a real and current problem that we have, people's performing sanitary activities at random. And that is going into our current water source, which is Magnesia Creek, I'm looking at the map, and Harvey. So we're not going to solve this all now in the space of a 10-minute meeting. So what I would suggest we do is if council agrees, is put a working group together, because some of these things are technical. Lions Bay is very much engaged. You know, you think you don't have money, we have less money, but what we do have the ability to do is provide some sort of in-kind type of contribution, whether that's staff time, given that we've just approved addition of additional staff member on the Public Works crew. We have a shiny new backhoe that I know we really want to see how well it works. So there's lots that can be done there. So as far as the presentation is concerned, perhaps we can just stick to that now with the proviso that the details will need to be subject of a full series of meetings. If I can ask...
We're happy to meet at any time with a working group if you establish it.
We'll need to do that because, quite frankly, we're just in the beginning stages of implementing a trails policy of our own, both in-village trails and external to the village. I keep pointing at the map because it's the most convenient. You know, the municipal boundaries are quite close to us, and the trails obviously extend. The one thing that you mentioned here on section 1, there was a telemetry station. Do you know what that was?
I thought that it was for Ministry of Highways to collect data on weather. Ken Moore,
you know that?
he may
Yeah, there was, pardon me, there was data from that we obtained from a decommissioned telemetry station. I just didn't know where it was, but
It was there.
Ken, yeah.
Okay. Okay. The section 2 note, it says a section of road was repaired that was in danger of collapsing down the mountain above the village. Who
Yes.
did that repair?
That was, I spoke to Pierre Freely of Bauman Engineering,
Mhm.
and he's quite familiar with that stretch of work. And I was up, the contractor, Jeremy Power, thought he would have difficulty for about a 10 or 15 meter section of trail of getting a machine around that rock. So we were looking at, and that's why I spoke to Mr. Freely, is how we could scale that rock to remove that danger. But subsequently I was looking at it, and I thought we would just put a bit of reinforcing along the trail to widen it. And so Mr. Powers has said that he would like to go up and look at that again, based on not having to scale the road.
Okay. Tell us about the funding that you have managed to secure.
Well, we're in the process of establishing a charitable foundation. So we actually, we're anticipating that's going to be the spring or summer of this year. So we have not pursued it, but we do have, we're associated with the Federation of Mountain Clubs. They have charitable status. So by April 1, we're in a position to make an application to Whistler Lacombe Foundation for funding. So that would be our first test of this idea of ours.
And it looks to me like each bite-sized piece is on the order of $40,000-$50,000. Is that about right? That's
I
what this.
think that would be the cheap side.
Yeah, that's the low end of the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking at significant funding. So it's the kind of thing that we can take a chunk at a time. We don't, I mean, I say 5 years, it might be 10 years
Yeah.
before we get
Yeah.
going.
Well, I mean, I think I speak for council that we would have no issue with you gaining access through the gate, parking at the trailhead there, or driving vehicles up. Again, some sort of safety protocols that we have in place. We are not allowed to access certain roads depending on rainfall conditions and so on, and you'd obviously be expected to follow those. But what I suggest we do, colleagues, is strike a working group, even perhaps just a select committee, consisting of Paul, staff, Lions Bay Search and Rescue, right, Ed?
Sure.
Yeah. One council member,
Trailblazers.
Trailblazers, right, John? I thought I saw John Dudley here.
No, I'm hiding.
Yes, yeah. Is that why you're here, or you're
Yeah,
here?
that's why I'm here.
Yeah. So typically we don't entertain comments from the peanut gallery or any gallery for that matter. But seeing as the proponents are all here, perhaps could we have a 30-second synopsis on what you say, John, as the doyen of the Trailblazers?
Well, I mean, having been here since '72 and seeing the issues sort of regarding access to the Lions Trail, which has now become one of the most popular sort of trails in the Lower Mainland and has caused a lot of problems on summer weekends as far as parking goes. I feel that, I mean, we're in a position where we have to sort of do what we can to make Lions Bay sort of more friendly towards hikers. And Pat Harrison, some years ago, he put in 2 small trails going to alleviate the parking problem at the bottom from the school playing field up to the Lions Trail, which our Trailblazers have now maintained and improved over the years. But unfortunately, it was a wonderful idea, but people still, occasionally people park there and then sort of walk up and go through, up the roads to get through the gate. But parking is our biggest issue at the sort of bottom. And we have built an alternate trail, actually, Trailblazers, that joins the Lions Trail after the Magnesia Lions turnoff, which I've noticed more and more people are starting to use. So we would like to sort of coordinate. I'm happy to be on any working sort of group that you.
Okay, good. Well, I think that sort of points to the communications piece as well. You know, we need to get the people that actually listen to the BC Mountaineering Club before they head out around the parking issues, the signage that we're planning to put up this summer, and so on and so forth. So it's great timing. Ed, any comments you'd want to make on behalf of the Lions Bay SAR?
I mean, certainly from a rescue perspective, any improved access is beneficial to the group. I mean, currently we bang our own personal vehicles up the road to the drivable portion, and we've been out on numbers of times with Paul doing that trail clearing. The only caveat to that is the nicer you make it, you know, we don't want Stanley Park all of a sudden to come here. We've already got that situation at Tunnel Bluffs where there's people running across the highway and overcrowding parking. So it's kind of a double-edged sword as far as I'm concerned. You've got watershed preservation, which probably should be permanent from the village standpoint. Search and rescue, we certainly could use the improved access. Some of our brushing and clearing access has been for helicopter access so we can respond in a quicker fashion. We've been putting new signage up there just to try and minimize hikers from getting lost. And we put some up in 2016. In the spring of 2017, somebody lit a brand new sign on fire. So we're seeing more activity of fires within the watershed. So to Paul's, you know, action of improving access, sure, that may reduce sprains and strains and things like that, but the present rough condition, as far as I'm concerned, it does dissuade some people and cause them to turn back maybe prior to achieving the summit, which is somewhat self-regulating, if you will, on the number of people that are actually getting up to the top. Most of our calls last year were non-physical from a medical standpoint. There was a great number that were just underprepared people. So we're getting trail joggers, we're getting people dehydrated, and generally not prepared once they get into a wilderness facility or area. So making it more accessible is a double-edged sword. We could quite easily see our volume of calls increase because it is more accessible. So that's probably my quick take on that.
Okay, thanks.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to be part of a working group.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Lions Bay SAR was out every weekend in the summer.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
we did 3 calls in one day.
Yeah.
It was our busiest.
and that's not going to go down. So these are all things that we need to do. So Peter, how would we do this? Committee of council, just an ad hoc working group, facilitated by us. I mean, this is obviously the right place to gather.
Yeah, it'd be, I guess it'd be a special committee as opposed to a standing committee. And set it up any way you like, really.
Okay, let's think about that. So if the rest of council is agreeable, Peter and I will think this through. Have something for next council meeting so we can get going. Because assume, when do you think your first shovels would hit the ground in
Well, it's
preference?
a long shot where we get this funding. I mean, I'm quite happy if there's a working group being established and it wants to come to some terms of reference. We could always delay our funding requests until the fall.
Never do that. That's my free advice to you.
I'm with the mayor on that one, I wouldn't delay, but so aligning things, you have the manpower if you had your funding, yes?
We'll be hiring it, yeah.
Okay, so there we go, and I mean, the other stuff is not so hard, access, even temporary sanitation, so in your heart of hearts, would you see any chance of this happening in summer, I presume?
That
this
would be
year?
the earliest, yeah, we got
But
funding.
what percentile chance is that?
Probably
Low?
50-50, I
50-50,
guess.
that's pretty
That's
high.
good odds.
That's pretty high.
That's odds I like.
Okay,
Well, you've got plenty to be going on, so we certainly don't want to hold you up. But we also in the vein of Ed's comments, we need to know where we stand. And these are things that can correctly communicated, correctly planned. We can actually address a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
So, working group it is. We'll get back to you on that one. Thanks very much for coming to see us. Looks pretty exciting as far as I'm concerned. So thanks.
Your worship and council.
So we'll move on to the next item in the agenda. It's further delegation, and it is Scott Gordon and Renee Rose on Dogs in the Village. Welcome. 10 minutes on the subject matter.
Hi. Thank you. So we're building at 90 Lime Avenue, and right next to us, to the north, tenants have moved in with 12 dogs.
Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah, okay. So the bylaws say you can only have 2 dogs. And I'm just wondering what the village will do and when the village will enforce the bylaws.
They're very noisy barking dogs, that's why it's really upsetting when you go onto our property to review the house, they bark and bark and bark and bark, and so it's very disruptive, and so, we know there's a bylaw against having the dogs, we're just wondering what the city can do to enforce the bylaws.
Okay, well, I can understand how quickly that can get to be a fairly unpleasant situation. It's not a policy issue as far as I'm aware, Peter, so perhaps you can tell us what's to be done administratively.
Well, as it's a law enforcement matter, law enforcement matters are discussed in closed meeting. I have conversed with both the delegation and as recently as this afternoon, and as well with the head of the household that lives in the subject property. So yeah, I'm not really in a position to speak openly about enforcement or compliance, but can certainly address those things in closed.
Fine, thanks. Okay, so rightly, there are certain matters that come before council that have to be done in closed first, privacy, people's private business. So I understand we are going to be hearing about that. It's one of the items that was just added, I presume. So we haven't seen any material on that. That's why we're all blank about that. So I guess the answer is to you now. We're going to be hearing about it, and presumably out of that will come some action items.
Okay, just to add to it, the tenants have received eviction notice for the end of February. But that whole process is really fraught with problems. If they contest it, of which they have up until February 13th to do, that whole process could go on for months and months and months.
Okay, but I don't believe that's a village matter.
Right.
That's a property owner matter, which is really not within our purview or any of our business. So we'd have to leave that one beside. What we do have is bylaws, and obviously we need to understand where we stand with those. And I believe that we will. So,
We just didn't want to rely on that, like, sort of was maybe thought that perhaps you rely that maybe the landlord can get this
got it.
bad tenant out, but I wouldn't rely on that because we believe he is disputing the notice for a number of different reasons, so that could go on, a hearing would have to be held, so we're just like the bylaws enforced and not rely on the Landlord and Tenancy Act, that's a separate issue.
It is a separate issue, and I don't think we'd predicate any action on it. So we have tools of our own that we're going to be hearing about, and then obviously we'll get back to you on that one.
Perfect, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming. Okay, so we caught up a little bit on that one, the time that we spent on the other one, but we have one final delegation, and that is Cambyses Zordigan on parking issues. Welcome. 10 minutes on the subject matter.
First of all, on behalf of my family, thank you so much for this administration. You have done a great job for improvement in Lions Way. But there's still one issue is not resolved after 15 years. That issue is the parking. I know that Carl knows better than all of us that what had happened this year, last year, in summer. We find out that the parkometer is not working, doesn't work actually, because everybody comes here in 2 days, that the bylaw officer is there, they pay for that, and after that, what will happen? Everybody, all of them, they park on the grass, on the road, and just, actually they bother us, but one thing that should bother you is fire. They are going to they make a party at the beach and make the fire, that it happened last year 2 times, that the firefighter came over there. And the other issue is that when we don't have anyone after 10 p.m., still we have the issue that everybody comes over there, they make whatever noise that they want to do, and they do whatever they want to do. I was watching because my house is faced to the parking lot. Make sex, pass the drugs, and whatever they want to do. And so much noise. Any country has a constitution. They have to follow the constitution. But one thing that it has not done, not follow, this is the second part. There is no, not high, even not low, liability for myself and the other neighbors. What we have to do? Bylaw officer, of course, it's very expensive if we want to have all the time. I talked with mayor before. And also that one is not working because after 10 p.m., everybody knows, because if you call the Lions Bay, it says that we have the bylaw officer from this time and that time, the other time, no one is there. Everybody knows. Everybody knows in the town. One more thing. I'm aware and I'm sure that Lions Bay love to be a friendly community. Friendly community for who? For you, us, or for the people that they are outside? For us that we pay the tax? It's not for us right now. Bylaw officer is not working. What we have to do, we need stop. You want to assign the bylaw officer for 2 days, welcome. But you need someone just turn around all the time. And as you know, right now, spring break is very close by. And after that, summer. Do you suggest me and the other neighbors that we leave in 3 months in summer, go somewhere else? Or we are going to fix it? One of my neighbors rent his house to someone. After this last summer, they left. Nobody can stay there because it's so much noise. You have a bylaw noise, but who is going to take care of that? We can have many laws and bylaws, but if there is no one just controlling, it doesn't doesn't work. Now, I'm suggesting that please, after 14 years that we suffer it, it's very important for us. Do something, come with a solution. I come up with one solution with one brain, but you are the best. Someone just turning around all the time, and just we need the towing. We have a company that they love to tow the cars after 10 p.m., which is in the bylaw. But who is going to tell them? Give the authority to the neighbors that if we saw that someone is after 10 over there, just call. Come over there and pick it up. We have to do something. We have a cliff over there, which is very attractive for the kids. Do we want that someone jumping from the cliff and die, and then we have the kind of rules and regulation? Do we want that we have the fire and just burn all around the lower Kelvin group, and then you come up with a solution? Or this is better that we find the solution. I know that we are not obligated to provide parking lot for the outsiders. There is a beach. They can go to the beach, whatever they want to do. But not, we are not obligated to. The parking lot is belong to the residents. Not to the outsiders, the drug dealers or the kids that they want to come over here, enjoy themselves after 12 till 4 o'clock on the morning. Or do you want that you give me all of yours phone number that I call you at 2 p.m., 2 a.m. In summer and just call, please, just you will be awake. Because I'm awake, everybody is awake. Why we have to suffer? Please, you have done many good things in here. This parking lot is a big issue. You are not obligated to provide the parking space for the jumper. Whatever they want to do, none of our business. The parking lot is belong to the residents. And after 10 p.m., what they have to do? Just what? Close the windows in summer and just be hot cannot sleep? Do something, please. You know that, Carl. We talked together a few times. Please do something that it works. I'm very, very disappointed about this matter. And you have to follow yours, Constitution, high liability. There is nothing. Not for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You make a compelling argument. We are working on it. We hope to have the solution in place by this summer.
Summer, please. Sorry, but I'm talking from a spring break.
Well, I'm not making any deadline promises. You have two issues. One is to do with parking, and one is to do with unruly members of the public. They're somewhat two different issues, perhaps with the same solution: enforcement. So I'm not going to
Close the
presuppose.
parking lot. Just leave it for the residents. What's wrong with that?
As I say, we're going to be hearing final recommendations for this summer's parking soon. I'm looking at the CAO, but apparently we're going to be hearing them soon. So thank you for making a compelling argument for the residents' case.
Thank you so much, Carl. I appreciate it. And Mr. CEO, I would like if there is anything that you want to make an arrangement to talk about the issues. I'm aware very well of that. I can give you the recommendation if you let me know to be in the meeting. Is it possible?
I'll contact you if there's
Thank you,
anything.
sir.
When we
Thank
first
you.
came to, sorry. when we first came
Mr.
to-
Stone, as the governance expert that holds us to task whenever we put a foot wrong, you know perfectly well you're not entitled to address the meeting, but we'll let you.
Well, council has the privilege to call on the members of the.
Okay, so we're exercising that privilege.
When we first came to Lions Bay in the early 80s, we had police patrols on a regular basis throughout the village. And the village does pay for police services.
Yes.
And I don't know how many years have gone by where I hardly see a police car coming in. But what I understand is they patrol and then they turn around and go back.
Was that from Squamish?
Yes, the Squamish. But we were also informed at one meeting many years ago that if there was ever an issue which was contrary to some kind of law, like drinking and other issues, it's a police matter, and you call the police department.
Unfortunately, this is the problem of the police. If someone kills someone, the police come after 2 hours.
No.
You know, this police in Squamish, there are 2, 3 boys or girls over there, and they never show up.
Oh, no, but the police,
I know
the
that.
police appeared
And
before
what we
council.
are paying them actually. Are you we are paying them?
147 a year.
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, the police appeared before council and instructed that if there was any behavior that was unbecoming, and this had to do with what's happening at Brunswick
And
Beach.
then what they do?
Well, okay, let's not get too embroiled in this. Those were
But I'm
kinder and
just saying,
gentler
it sounds
times.
like very much we need more police,
That is clearly an issue, and I can
How
assure
about the
you that.
watchdog? Someone we pay every day, or 2 people in 2 times per day just watching around. What we call it.
Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you everybody. Thanks.
And with that, I think we come to the end of the delegation section of the agenda, and so we'll move on now to the more mundane, prosaic part of council's business, and that is review and approval of minutes of prior meetings. We only have one, that's the meeting of January 23. Can I have a motion and a second? Discussion.
I had no changes.
I had 1 or 2 tiny ones, but I'll let others go first. No? Jim? No? Okay, so on item 2, this is on page 17 of the package, I believe we want to say discussion on capital items of prior years be added to make it meet with the other issues. And I believe that in the report on page 21, under the encroachment application, which we considered, there was a question as to the septic field in the setback. Does that something?
It's permitted.
It's permitted.
Yeah.
So no need to no need to call it out, because I don't know if anybody will notice that if they review it, but
I
it's
checked.
all good.
Yeah.
Okay, so no need to mention it in the minutes.
Okay.
Council, you don't want to put it in the minutes? No? Okay. Fine by me. And then on the next page, the recommendations that came out of Council Strategy Committee, I think we need to adapt those 2 statements there. Because essentially we're reporting the Council Strategy Committee recommendation, not the Council recommendation. So I believe the statement that as the Council Strategy Committee has recommended that Council direct the Public Works Manager to post and hire for blah blah blah, all the way to the end of that thing, that Council does so resolve. And then again for the other one underneath. Would that not be...
Yeah, well, yeah, it should really be that the public works manager be directed to post for hire. Forget the whole first part about. You can
Fine,
say,
yeah.
Whereas the
Yeah,
committee has
okay, that would work too,
recommended
yeah.
that council shall direct and same thing with second one.
Fine. So just to make it actually a resolution of council, not sort of
Yeah.
half-baked.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other one was under item 10. Vote failed. I believe there's no such thing as a vote failed. The motion failed to secure a majority vote. Why? Because there were only 4 people at the council meeting, and so the reason the motion failed, not the vote, the motion failed
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't get a majority vote.
Yeah, no, you're right. It should be motion failed. That's fine.
Motion failed instead of vote failed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different
Failed
stylistic
to
ways
secure a
address it.
majority vote.
But if the mayor is present, the mayor only casts a vote when there's a tie. So if there are 3 other council members, it has to be 2-1 or 3-0.
Yeah, and so
Doesn't happen.
it doesn't actually work that way. That's old Local Government Act stuff. The community charter actually speaks differently to that. Okay, so and I will be raising that again in matters arising, and that's all I had on the minutes. So it's a seconded motion. Any further discussion? Last chance. All in favour of approval of those minutes, and opposed? That carries. So business arising, if I may, if council will indulge me, on that bylaw issue. It's been suggested to me that we may want to reconsider the original motion, which was to rescind the secondary suite fee simply by rescinding the bylaw itself. Peter, just remind us of the rules about reopening a motion, please.
Just gonna refresh.
The reason, obviously, that you don't just get to do this willy-nilly is that the chair of a meeting can then bring up his pet project all the time, and so you don't want to allow that, so there's rules around this. Not that this is one of my pet projects.
I'm not fatigued yet. Just stop.
It's a council procedures bylaw issue, is it not?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is what I thought. So there's a time limit on when you can
Yeah,
do that,
yeah.
right?
What's the time limit?
So the time limit is that the mayor or council member who voted in the majority may only initiate a reconsideration of this section at the same council meeting as the vote took place or within 30 days of that meeting. So
Okay, so the original motion was a lot longer than
yeah,
30
it
days
was
ago.
before Christmas.
Exactly, so there's no way we can reconsider that motion. We are considering other things to do with secondary suites in this meeting, so we could potentially, if members of council don't like what they see there, we can change those motions, but no reconsideration of the original motion. So that's all I wanted to bring up under matters arising.
Peter, is there a loophole on this one that you can see?
You can bring it back in 6 months.
It's a little late for this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just remind us what we did was we kicked that can down the road, acknowledgedly and purposely. So it's available to us at some point in the future, but not now. Okay?
Or, as you were saying, amending the, what's later on in the
Yeah, yeah. Those motions are new, so they can be amended.
Are you up? Do you have
But
strength for it?
No,
They're not dealing with whether or not we have a surcharge.
no,
It's
no. They're
dealing
far
with
more administrative. So I don't even know if
just
there's room there.
definitions.
So that was all I wanted to mention. I know that I have discussed with members of council that maybe we should have made a different choice there, but I'm fine with leaving it as it is. We're approaching the point where the fee is going to be charged. When do the utility bills go out, Pam?
At the end of the month.
Yeah, end of this month. Yeah, so unfortunately that can is out of reach. Okay, so we'll move on in the agenda to unfinished business. There's none, amazingly enough. And then under 7B, the strategic plan poster revisited on page 27. Peter, do you want to tell us what we're looking at here?
So there were some suggestions on some changes to what was approved at the last meeting. Some of the suggestions related to more or less administrative errors. A few typos. There was one item that appeared twice. So there were some administrative things that could simply be done, I think, within the purview of correcting the intent, or correctly presenting the intent of council. However, going through the list, there was a suggestion that within infrastructure section, complete funded public landscaping plan appears twice, and goals 2 and 3 are virtually the same. So the goals 2 and 3 actually are not the same.
But you merged them, I think.
So no, because what goal 2 relates to is really malleable service standards that are appropriate for Lions Bay. They can come and go, that we can change them. It depends on council priorities. What goal number 3 is referring to is meeting critical standards and industry best practices. These are things that aren't sort of at the whim and tailored to the needs of Lions Bay. These are things that are required by either regulatory reasons or best practices in terms of what public works departments are supposed to do. So that's why they're set out as two separate goals.
Okay.
The second item was in planning, in the planning section, adopt a new local bylaw, building bylaw complying. Sorry, that was just a spelling thing. So that's been fixed. In the financial section, the third financial goal, with respect to, so the way it reads right now is utilize grant and debt funding for spending on new and replacement assets for future generations and eligible funding for operating costs and addressing the infrastructure gap. The suggestion was that it read that grant and taxation funding be used for operating costs, but we cannot use grant funding for operating costs, which is why it was changed in the first place to what it reads now.
What is the small communities grant eligible for?
We can use that for operating, but
Okay, well, there's one.
we
I
don't-
can name
we don't
about 3 or
actually,
4 more.
apply for that. It's just funding we get.
Yeah, it's not really sort of a grant application per se.
Well, who says anything about application? The point is a policy issue, and that is we are intending to use grant and debt for long-term stuff, and grant and taxation for stuff that's current. I'm fine with saying eligible funding because that accommodates anything that's eligible. So I mean I think that probably it's a bit mealy-mouthed on the policy thing, which is we agree that if we've got a shortfall in capital spending, whether it's infrastructure gap, I don't like the term infrastructure gap, by the way, because there's a lot of other capital spending that's been left behind, then we have to cover that with taxation, not push it down the road. But this is probably good enough. What does council say?
I think it's fair to say we've probably hit the wall on this document.
I can see your eyes glazing over, but I thought that was just
small print.
I think that this speaks to what it's supposed to. It's a clear message of what we're about in Lions Bay, as it shows clearly, shows where we're going, what we're trying to do.
I'm good with that. I can live with that.
Okay, there was a couple of other just sort of technical administrative things that were fixed, but then the other thing that was suggested was that we change in the infrastructure section the first goal, which says adequately resource maintenance of existing Lions Bay infrastructure and infrastructure spending based on the long-range priorities of the infrastructure master plan. Actually,
The typo that was pointed out by, okay, it was me, if everybody wants to know.
that was supposed to.
That was supposed to come out.
Yeah, that was supposed to come out. That last little bit in the brackets. But in any event, the suggestion was that it be changed from that reading to something like maintain, replace, and institute infrastructure based on the long-range priorities of the infrastructure master plan. And the reason that I would recommend against changing it is that I think that it's important for council, and this council and future councils, to, if they rely upon this document or look to this document for some guidance going forward, that adequately resourcing staff and to do the work that council wants to get done is really important. And that was something that we covered off quite extensively in the strategic planning workshops that we've held, all 3 of them, particularly beginning with the first one. The need and importance of providing adequate resources, both financial and personnel, to do the work that needs to get done was really highlighted as something that this council has taken to heart in implementing. So I think it's worthwhile maintaining those words and that concept, because I think it has value.
Well, I suppose you could use that argument for everything here, that it has to be adequately resourced. I think adequately resourced anything is implied in stating that it's what council wants to do. But like Councillor McLaughlin, I'm starting to reach my plateau on this one, so I'm not going to.
This is only the first hour of 4 tonight.
Yeah, so I'm not going to belabor the point. I think it's again a fairly mealy-mouthed way of saying what it is that we're actually trying to do, but I can live with it. Anything else?
There was a suggestion that we once again consider replacing the tick marks with numbers. The consideration against it the last time was that the strategic planning document itself has numbers, although we've now combined a lot of these things. And at the last meeting when we adopted this, or when council adopted this, it was stated that this, basically any necessary amendments to the document would be made. So we could add numbers and then put numbers that correspond with this document into the strat plan. So that is a possibility of something that we can do.
Well, I mean, if you're saying harmonizing with the strat plan will be difficult, why don't we just put letters here, like A, B, C, D, E instead, so that I don't have to say the planning goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the ninth one.
I agree that it's certainly much easier to reference a specific number or ladder.
Okay,
as
so
the
well,
case
why don't we
may
just
be.
let you think whether it's a number or a letter? I understand the challenge of harmonizing it with the document, although nobody says that they have to be the same. This is a summary, whereas the other thing is a document.
Mayor.
This is a bit of an overarching document that we follow from time to time. We refer back and forth to it all the time. It was created for that purpose. It's to give us a sense of direction and what we're doing, to show what we're doing. It does that. It will be modified down the road. But the thing is that right now, I look at this and I say, yeah, we've talked about this. This is good. It outlines what we want to do, what the goals are for the Village of Lions Bay, where we're going for 2018. It does that. It's not perfect because it will change. By the end of the year, it will change, mark my words. So let's just take it as a map that's taking us down a road that's working.
Okay, that's good, counsel. So, was that it, Peter, on the commentary?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to adopt as amended, and the amendment is only, I believe, striking it's just a typo.
Yeah.
I think it arrived there as a cut and paste, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and we'll leave it up to staff to decide letters, numbers, or ticks. Yeah?
Why don't we just say, somebody tell me.
Letters.
Letters. Capital or lowercase?
I'm being vague here.
Okay, letters it is, and we'll give you editorial right to decide whether capital letters or lowercase
Okay,
letters.
Thank you.
So as amended, can I have a motion in a second? Any further discussion?
I really appreciate the strong work that Carl and Peter and the staff put in on this. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think it is a good document. As Jim says, it's a succinct go-to document that shows what it is that we're trying to accomplish, that I think will actually leapfrog into future council as well. So thanks for pointing that out and saying so. I'll call the question. All in favour and opposed? That carries. Okay. Whew. So when do you get it printed and put on the wall? Double size.
I think we have that lined up actually, so it'll be soon.
Great. Okay, now we're moving on to supplemental budget request starting on page 29. And the recommendation is simply to review the report. So let us do that starting on page 29. I don't propose that we go through this piece by piece. Pam, just give us a sense of what's new compared to what we've seen before.
Essentially, the biggest change is we just have additional backup to some of the requests that we've made, because what staff would like now is some direction from council about things you'd like to keep, if there's anything you want to remove, because the plan is to stay on track by next week. By next council meeting, we would want to determine what the tax rate would be and what the final supplemental requests are. So we have the additional information, so if there are any questions you have about some of the backup. There were just a couple of changes really from the last time.
with further discussion with the building inspector and the fire chief about the burn building, we actually, because the stop work order can now be removed, and we've had some engineering reports, we know now how we can complete the burn building. So we think the realistic number to complete it would be 36,000. We'd rebudget 30, so there's an additional 6,000, but then it will be finished. And we also added, we're finally getting in sort of the final numbers for the training compound on Brunswick Hill that burnt down. And we did have insurance on that, but there's been some unexpected costs in terms of site preparation. So there's a potential for needing an additional $10,000 this year to complete it, over and above what the insurance proceeds are.
But only
So that was an
10,000.
addition. Yeah, just 10,000. And that, I'm being a bit conservative with that number. The hope still is that we're adjusting some of the contents they purchase, that we can come in under the insured value. The site preparation was more expensive than we had anticipated. It was almost $20,000 just to demolish, and then an additional about $12,000 to prepare the site for the trailer. But that was offset by a very good deal they got on the trailer. They were able to purchase a used trailer to replace it. So we're just finally getting in all the final costs. So I thought, just to be conservative, I'd put that in. The hope is that we won't need it.
Okay, well, let's cover that off when we get to it.
So just highlighting the changes. So basically, it's additional backup for numbers that you've seen, and then we also have some numbers in now for the office renovation. And I broke it into 3 stages because the numbers were fairly large, so it makes it easier to make a decision if you just want to proceed with some of it or all of it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Pam. Who wants to kick off? Ron, you look like you want to
I am.
take the ball.
And I'll speak slowly, and I'll point to the pages here. My editorial is this, is that we're a pretty serious bunch here, and I really appreciate how Pam has put forward a clean, clear budget so that, you know, we're pushing to probably no more than one more brief session, and we'll be ready to go with this. So for me, the pieces kind of go like this. Using Pam's page 30, and we go to the bottom number, we've got a cash surplus of round numbers 155. Tell me when I'm wrong. Flipping to page 32, she shows that if everybody got their wish list with a bunch of to be determined costs, it'd be 257. So there's a $102,000 shortfall. At a 14,600 1 point equals that tax increase, that's a little over 8 points as a straight across the board tax increase.
That's assuming all these asks
Assuming they're all met,
yeah.
which I think the 8 points I have a very strong problem with. So looking at this and, you know, loading up with as many buns to fight later on as I can, my thinking is this: I'm going to ask that we come back to the stairs and Carl and I start throwing buns at each other on that one. So I'll go away with that, but my view is that I'm a yes to the project because it's a safety issue, but we need to work out the cost. I'm fine with the generator for 15 grand. I'm fine with the generator is a safety issue. The staff's stuff is compelling. The burn building, you know, I think of the chief and his fundraising over the years for 6 grand. I can go with this. The asset management is a wash. The community signage, we're recommitting prior year dollars, so I'm a yes there. I'm going to take the first hit for the team on the beach park. I think I will have a committee meeting on Thursday night. And I believe it would be fair to say that the committee members, it's best to get it right than to do it partial or to disrupt the community with something that we would temporarily put in place that we're going to then rip apart a year later. Bad imaging here. And I've seen what the draft report looks like in terms of some well-spent dollars to position the beach park. Without talking to my committee, I would take away the $20,000 request, because I think the bigger solution would be that if the village sells significant assets, there is our opportunity to do it in one shot in a full planned way.
And so I would be happier seeing whatever council decided as a number goes on the 5-year plan. Again, presuming that one asset sells that, and we do our alignment with getting tenders and all the things come back to council for the recommendations of new washroom, yes, no, terracing, yes, no, moving the things all around the place, that we can come up with a number. So my ask would be, I'll take the 20 off on this rebudget. And my ask will be that when we do the 5-year financial plan, that a large number is put in place based on borrowing internally from the sale of the asset to do the project.
And in fact, potentially spending from the sale of the Ocean Access Fund for Ocean Access type qualified projects.
And there's some of that in there too, so
Yeah.
that's Peter to sift through the nits. But the quick piece on that one in terms, and I'll use a big number, and I have no idea that that's the right number. But if, for the sake of argument, if we borrowed internally $750,000 and paid it back over 30 years, it's 30 grand. So, or 25, I can't remember what it is. So it's a good trade, I think, and the village ultimately gets an asset that's good for 30 years. So I'll just go down. So I've accepted the rest of the stuff on page 31.
Do we want to do this one by one, or do we want to go through page by page?
I'm ready to come up with a number in about 2 seconds.
Okay.
Which will, then it's a matter of where we all want to go with this. So to page 32, so far what we've given up is the 20 on the beach park, and we're coming back to the discussion on the stairs. So from the salt spreaders up until the office renovations, I see these as are, operational things that if they say we need them, then I'm going to guess we do. And the previous bunch were largely safety issues. I'm going to pitch that perhaps for $40,000 we may want to kick the council chamber renovation down the road. I was up there this morning with the Historical Society, and it's not as grandiose as this chamber, but it's about the same size, and we don't really need telecommunications of any major piece. There's some nice to have stuff, but for $40,000, I think the residents would prefer to have stairs or emergency generators or other things of that nature. So for me, I would suggest I added the council chambers, the office, the safe, and the windows. It comes to $41,000. So that's something of this $102,000 we may want to do. I'm of the same view for the fire truck reserve. I understand why it's there, but $20,000 of a reserve for Fred, tell me the truck's going to cost me less than $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. It's not a big deal, and if we really wanted it, assuming the property sells, it would come from there. So I would put the fire truck reserve out. Regrettably, I think for $10,000 on a committee that has hardly been struck for the memorial, I would kick that one down the road too. So if I look at what I have here, without further discussion on the stairs, with the outs that I have put in, it's $91,000 of the 102 that is on the shortfall. And when I honestly look at myself and say, what did we really do for the village? We did safety, we did safety training, signage, I'm talking about new dollars, a whole bunch of stuff for the works yard, and I'd rather spend the money on the parking meters and stuff like that at this point, which haven't been established, than some of these other ones. So that's my 2 bits worth on it. I'm not preconceived on anything if there's anybody else goes, but the bigger picture for me is it's the 7th time I've done this now. It's always the weighing of the nice to haves to the needs to have, and being in a position where relative to the villagers you can stand with a pretty straight face and say, I feel really good about this budget because there were tough choices, but we did the things that have mattered the most. And I think until our major asset sales or another one transpires, that perhaps we do some of the things that we want to do, but not all of them. That would be my piece.
Okay, thanks. That's certainly giving us stuff to think about. I'll go around the table. Fred?
Well, Ron's got his axe out nicely, and I appreciate that, because that was a pretty chunky hunk of cash that was sitting on there. I was all geared up for the memorial thing, but you know, he's got a good point. We're running such overruns as far as I can see on our budget that we really don't want to see a big tax increase. I think we've been pounding the tax increases up for the last couple of years, and I think it's gone far enough.
Can I just ask what they were? Pam, do you know off the top of your head, 2015 we did an 8% raise, increase in tax, is that right? The numbers that I have in my head are 8%, 12% and 8%.
Yeah, last year was 5.
Oh, 5, okay, not 8, okay.
So I meant to bring them, I apologize, to this meeting.
And the year before was 12, do you remember? Yeah. And the year before that was 8, I believe. Okay, so that's a total of 25% over what was a baseline. So that's quite a bit of extra money to be playing with for starters. So just bear that in mind as we hold the discussion. So go.
Well, yeah, I think all these ideas that we have of how we'd like to spend money are all sound. You can't fault any of them, but essentially you got to choose what's the most important. And you know, for the beach project, well, that would be nice. But no, Ron makes a good point that there could be alternate ways of doing it. The memorial thing, well, maybe we don't need the 10 grand for it. Maybe we could, if the community can come up with funding on their own, so much the better.
I think for that one, the issue for me is Modi is a key player in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And they could do nothing for 6 months, and you'll tax the point for it.
Mm-hmm.
Some more for timing, you mean?
Yeah.
Can't argue. Yeah. Yeah. No, I like your machete attack on this. I don't like tax increases that much. I think when we came on at the beginning of this term, we were sort of begrudgingly allowed tax increases, but I think 3 or 4 years of tax increases, enough is enough.
Are you fine with the, I mean, maybe staff might be creative. I mean, for me, I think it's fair to say, you know, council would work out of, abandoned parking lot, meeting regulatory stuff. I mean, when I was upstairs, it's fine enough up there. I mean, you can hold meetings, and in fact, it's, you eat your own cooking kind of thing, and if, we can sit around a table anywhere, so I could save 41 grand.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about that, Nigel, you know the page off the top of your head on what was planned for the new council chamber renovation?
Oh, that was mine. It was
45?
basically page 45.
Oh, 45, so I'm going the wrong way.
It was, and the reason I broke it out, because even within this, there's things we could cut. It was filling in the window at the end, so we'd have a window to put the TV on. Just new council table and chairs, if we did choose to keep this table down here, or we could move that one up here and then just get a different table for down here. We just need a locking cabinet, just that we could lock them, your packages up in. And then we would have to create wheelchair accessibility to the council chambers.
Yeah, so this is where the money comes from, Ron. So I'm not proposing that we debate this now. We'll do that all in the end. I'm just looking for input from individual members now. But here it is.
So that's one of the reasons I broke it out this way,
Yeah.
in terms of showing you within each section there's some things that could be cut. In terms of doing the village office, we had actually thought ourselves that maybe a first step, if you did want to move up, is move up but not do anything with this in case it didn't work out and you could move back, not building the office. We could still put a desk in here. Like not doing something so permanent is that if you do decide to move up, you can move back. We don't. So that's why we split that up, because we realized they actually weren't linked. And then the fireproof safe, that was something that we had actually thought of this year. We really do need a fireproof safe, but unfortunately because of the weight, we'd have to reinforce the floor. And these were quotes we got, but we would go out and get more quotes.
Yeah.
It was difficult getting quotes in time, but...
Well, I mean, if we do, let's just stay on this one so we can knock these things off. $5,000 to fill in a window. I mean,
$3,000 for access, which is a bunch of wood on a 5-foot path.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
That's more from the parking lot, the asphalt.
Yeah, so the wheelchair
Oh,
access.
the park.
Yeah, you have to.
Sorry,
drive it in.
wasn't thinking of that.
From the upper parking lot.
From the upper parking lot.
Yeah, even though we did the accessibility here, which cost us 30,000, if I remember correctly,
So-
after grant.
So this isn't a chopping block thing here. The way I look at this is that this is a very relevant discussion on this type of detail for the village. Because we cannot justify a tax increase for some of these items. There are other ways to do it. We have to, a lot of municipalities look at that and say, we've got surplus funds because of this or because of that. We can take that now, we can move that, but we don't, unfortunately for us, we don't have a lot of surplus funds right now. But we will as time moves on. We're developing these business plans, we develop this process, we say, okay, we want to do all these things, here it is, push it off the side, and then as money comes up, we can actually do it without doing increasing taxes. Because a lot of this stuff is important. It's nice to have important stuff, though. The basic workings are here. We need to justify the tax increases we've put in and say they were for a very good reason. We're not going to willy-nilly ask for tax increase just because it's nice to have. And so, the way I look at this, if we've got money spare, if we've sold some land, if we can justify putting money in, or borrowing money from that, then that's what we should do. But we should not. The last thing we should be looking at is tax increases. That's just my opinion.
Okay, well, how we've always done this before is to first see what we need to spend the money on, and then see what the resulting tax increase is. I have no problem approaching this from the other end, saying 0% tax increase. What can we get from it? Well, the answer is there in black and white. $154,811 worth. With, I will just point out, 2 items that we don't know the costs of, and those are. Oh, sorry, those are the ones we're debating. Okay, so I beg your pardon. So if those numbers total 154, we're golden. Otherwise, it's tax increase. Is that right, Pam?
Mm-hmm.
Unless we draw from reserves.
I look at this and I'm saying that 257 would come down to 148.
Part of that 254, Carl, is
Yeah.
the 80,000 for the stairs, which we're holding in reserve for the final bun.
Yeah, so we have a separate report on that. So we're not going. We'll debate that properly when that comes.
But that's a big swing in this, because if you're out 20 grand, to pick just a number, it's just a number. If you're out 20 grand and we can find it in the stairs, well, then we're pretty close to balanced.
Well, exactly. So the stairs are a big bite. So is the generator. As council's aware, through the infrastructure committee, we're actually trying to determine if the existing generator at the fire hall might suffice. Just to bring you up to speed, that is a 100 kilowatt generator. 100 kilowatt is sort of the power consumption of a small town. So, it's a very big generator. When we look at the power consumption of the fire hall, it's on the order of 9 kilowatts, a tenth of the capacity of the generator. Now, that is the average power requirement of the hall. We don't know if it's spiky. We don't know if when a pump comes on or a compressor comes on, maybe for all we know, the power spikes up to 50 kilowatts. But we don't know. So what I would propose to do there is to invest some money this year on a power logger, so we know. I'd also point out that when you put a generator in, you don't run all circuits through the generator circuit. You're not going to be running your baseboard heat. You're not going to be running stuff. You're going to be running the stuff you have to, as is the case at the fire hall, and as would be the case here. Now, just to remind us all, the reason we're doing generator, even talking generator, is this would be an emergency reception center. So presumably you would need heat, and the kitchen would need to work and all that stuff. So the power draw would be on the order of sort of a good size house, 10 kilowatts. Well, that's only 20 total right now. So unless the fire hall is really spiky, and we don't know that, because for some reason the meter doesn't look at peak power demand for some reason.
So I did talk to the electrical inspector that the building inspector spoke to. It is possible, technically, to use some of that power to power this facility. What he did recommend is that we get an electrical engineer, to do the complete calculation. We do need that anyways to determine what size generator we would need for this facility. But they would look
If it was separate.
Correct.
Yeah.
They would look at the load. They would also look at the load requirements of the fire building and what the balance is that's available. But there's also additional costs that would be needed to use that generator at this facility.
You'd have to get the power over here, and you'd need a transfer switch.
And they would identify that.
Yeah.
So we are engaging an engineer, an electrical engineer, to come out and review.
Okay.
And we will have that shortly, hopefully before the next budget
Oh, so
presentation.
you would hope to have sufficient information where we could actually still make a decision on spending 30 grand on a generator. We already put 15 into
Yes, it's
reserves.
Correct.
15
Yeah.
is-
Yeah, so it's 15.
So, I really think I know the answer. Yes, there will be adequate power over there. It will cost somewhere between 5 and 10 to get it here with an adequate power switch and logging and all the bells and whistles. That's a lot better than 30, sorry. I keep saying 60 because that was the other generator. So there is potentially money there. If it doesn't come about, I would suggest we might want to, this is a can we kick down the road.
We will have more definite numbers and
Okay. So there's potentially, we have 30,000 in play there, 15 of which is already taxed for, and we could potentially get away with
We should kick the can down the road.
10.
Yeah.
What is the electrical engineer going to cost? Nominal, right?
uh,
The grant.
maximum 2 grand.
Yeah.
Which we may be able to absorb in the public works budget
Mhm.
Yeah.
itself, so.
And and they may say, well, we don't know why a 100 kilowatt generator was specified back in the day. Put a power logger on, and we can put the power logger on for a year and see what they're drawing from hydro power, not generator power.
So Carl, you're suggesting, I'll keep track, I'm sure we'll all be keeping track by the end of the night, so that the 15 actually just becomes 0 when you eat our own 15.
If we need it, we've got more than
Yeah.
enough, because I'd suggest we do. But we don't know that. But if we do need a separate generator, I suggest that's a next year's
That's a
project.
can down the road, and we've already explored it, so we'll just use the 15 and kick the 15 out.
So I think we can take that 15 out.
Okay.
I also think we already know. No, I already said we'll discuss the stairs when that item comes up, so we'll just park that one. I'm somewhat jumping the gun here, so Norm.
Well, I think, I'm agreeing with most of what's being said, and my sense is that a tax increase is not something we want to do. But the stairs would be the only thing I think could be justified as a tax increase.
It's
So-
50-cent dollars too.
Yeah. So if we could fit in everything we need to for this 154 that we have left over, we'll just decide
Or close.
what
or-
makes the cut,
Or
and what
close
doesn't
where we
make the cut.
absorb it, yeah.
And if we need to, we tax for the stairs. It would be,
No, it's 50-cent dollars.
That's a TransLink grant, and we would be confident of getting that grant.
Yeah, very confident.
Yeah.
That is one heck of a lot of money to spend on stairs. 80,000 Canadian dollars on.
Save your strength.
So, yeah, I'm saving my strength for that debate. Okay, so I think that's probably a good principle to come from, Norm. So let's just run down the list. What else do you like and not like here?
well, I'm on the same page with the generator. I do think that given the capacity that we have, we should try and do our best to take advantage of it. So that involves a study, and we don't spend that.
Which we're doing already.
This
So yeah, we'll assess what power draw is at the CLAT, including all the fire trucks, including the Scott air packs, everything, and the maximum that'll be required.
Well, we know what the current draw is. It's 9.3 kilowatts on average, but it's this spike. That
But there are methods and practices when sizing a generator. So this engineer will review the power requirements for the CLAT,
Yeah.
and review the power requirements for this facility, and provide us with the best option
Good.
to power all.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't suggest that a 10 kilowatt would have been sufficient. Yeah, cold inrush current and pump starting, they draw plenty of power.
Generators, I've done a little bit of research with our generator in Gabriola, and we have an 8 kilowatt generator, but the reality is, if you go to the manufacturer, they tell you that optimum operating of that generator is about 65 amps, okay? Which is not a lot. And that's the reason most of household services were taken up to 100 amps, because they won't even power a household properly with peak surges. And so you look at one of these buildings, you can see that, yeah, that's not gonna be adequate. You're gonna have to go above, you probably have to go 15 or 20 kilowatts to get something really working. That's gonna work to peak power.
I'd like to have one of those babies.
Well, yeah. A lot of money.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So I think we're all have some consensus on how we handle the generator. Norm, what do you say about the burn building asset management plan?
Well, the only other, so I've identified what I think are nice to haves. I think the beach park is something that's a nice to have. I'm new to council. The chambers to me seem perfectly adequate. I don't see any need to renovate those. So
Well, I think the driver there, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, is actually to provide better working facilities for staff rather than.
Yeah, if the idea is we're gonna
Accommodate
have
council.
a planner in here 3 days a week, where are they gonna sit?
Mm.
And have an office and meet people and receive applications and process them and so forth. So that was
From
was
that
the
point of
idea,
view-
as well as the fourth day of the week, the building inspector would be in here using that same office, and the other half day that he works, so.
From that point of view, that room upstairs would make an adequate area for that, or for council chambers for that
what
matter.
happens to this room during the day?
No, we're gonna blow the wall out.
And incorporate the office into here.
We're gonna put a doorway in here and then
So,
put a wall across
yeah.
here.
Well,
to
what
be
I'm
an
saying is what
office and
happens to
meeting.
this room during the day.
It's fairly well used.
It's
I mean,
used.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Use it for
Yeah.
meetings. The building inspector actually
Yeah.
uses it a lot for
Yeah.
the drawings, and we suspect the
Yeah,
plan.
I often come in here and I say, oh, no, people are using
Yeah,
it.
it's stuff.
And then we leave.
So
Yeah.
either or, I mean, staff can make
So
their
that
own.
might be a bit of an
So-
ignorant perspective, but
so
it feels
Norm-
like a nice to have from my
Norm, would it
perspective.
be fair to say staff can figure out which they want, either us here or us up there, and they can, I mean, I don't care for 40%, they'd move upstairs.
Yeah.
There's certainly things that we're looking at in terms of how we can reduce the broken out costs on that page.
Yeah.
You know, don't fill in the window, for example. You know,
Or find somebody who will do it for a more reasonable charge, which would be more like $700.
well,
That's
I mean,
actually
you can,
half the quote I got
What is half the quote?
to fill in the window.
The quote was
So we got
$10,000.
one- yeah.
So,
Okay, well that's
so,
ludicrous.
let me be the mayor for a second. So, Norm, your piece was you would rather not spend the 41 on a,
Yeah.
okay.
The next piece, the fire truck reserve, I think that's something we should do on a windfall. So if we have, you know, if we have the good fortune of selling something, we should throw some money into a reserve for the fire
Exactly.
truck. And the memorial, I believe it's a good project, but I also feel it's a nice to have. So those are the items that I would put at the bottom of the shopping list, towards that 154.
Well, that would happen to be, just again to go backwards with the number, my 91 plus the 15 for the generator, so we're already flat, subject to the,
Well, we're going to find out about the stairs, so just to input my...
so that's the bun fight on the stairs,
Yeah.
what you have.
but I think the news would be better there rather than worse. So the burn building, sure. Asset management, sure. Community signage, sure. Beach park. Okay, if you think you can drop the additional $20,000 and do what we need to do as sort of a Band-Aid project for 29, which we have already, fine, against a bigger project, but you know, that's not just a nice to have. That's a well-used community facility.
I'm looking each of the council members in the face saying, I'm gonna wanna see yes on the 5-year plan.
Well, fair enough. So, in terms of the computer equipment, yeah, okay, fine. I had balked at the $8,000 server, but I understand it's not just an email server; it's a file server, so that's fine. $3,100 each for a Wi-Fi access point. I'd like a piece of that business if I was in the business. So,
So the 31 is based on the cost for the Wi-Fi access point at Breton Hall. So that includes the electrical and running the cable, the network cable to the wireless access point. It includes the wireless access point. It also includes monthly licensing or a licensing fee
licensing of what?
for the warranty or the maintenance on the access point. I'm not sure.
Well, I'll go down to Best Buy and buy one that when it breaks, you buy another one. So we don't need that. Yeah, I mean, this is just too rich. I understand it's a quote from a vendor, and it's our preferred vendor in this regard. It's not for internet access because we already have 50 megabits per second feed. Jim?
I just want to be careful with this one because fortunately or unfortunately I had the opportunity to attend a tsunami drill in Tofino last week. Okay?
Mm.
And I'll tell you one thing, that community hall, because of where it was located and how they had it set up, they had tremendous amount of Wi-Fi signal inside that building. Everybody was in there in that emergency, and they had TV cameras in there broadcasting things over Wi-Fi to all the news media outlets and stuff. All of the Wi-Fi, my phone and my iPad were the strongest signals I've ever seen, and they had tremendous communication. The rest of the town has nothing, but there, they had it figured for this tsunami thing, and I thought it was a wonderful thing. So, you know, for Broughton Hall, in the case of Lions Bay, if we're stuck here, it's not a bad idea to think about having good Wi-Fi there.
Well, we do have Wi-Fi there, and the issue is going to be that the cable gets hit by a tree on the highway, like has happened the last 15 times.
The cable for Broughton Hall is run through the wall. The cable here would be in a conduit on the ground.
No, I mean the internet access from
I see.
from the rest of
Yeah.
the world.
So it's just,
But this is what it costs to do that, so it's
Yeah.
not gonna cost any less to do the clat.
Okay.
And really, Councillor Hughes's points are really well taken. I've been in an EOC and seen how many people can descend upon that EOC, all the people that you need there to work, and they've all got their laptops and everybody needs to have a strong signal, so it is really important to make sure.
Oh well, I mean, if we're in an EOC situation, there's no internet in Lions Bay, almost guaranteed. But I don't know what these things are, but they must make the tea as well, right? For $3,100, you'd think, eh? No.
I don't know.
And for
enough
that,
about
I
the- I don't know
sure,
enough
okay,
about it to
yeah.
say about that price.
I'm just looking for the model number. Integrated coffee maker. I don't see it. Okay, but anyway, all right. I mean, it's small, but it's rich. You know, gosh, that's a lot of money for Wi-Fi access points. I put a new Wi-Fi access point in my basement. It cost me $56, but that I did run the wire myself, of course. And that's a very nice
I'm
one.
sure you ran it correctly.
And 4 antennas.
Do you have an electrical ticket?
No, it's low voltage.
Okay. Are you certified for low voltage?
Self-certified. Yes.
So,
Okay, so okay, if we don't see any wiggle room there, okay, gosh, because I think we're all okay on the tools, on the small equipment, the seeding, and the invasive species stuff. Yeah. Okay, so that's that, and for the rest, I'm with Ron entirely, all the way up to office renovation. I would like to do that because we do need to house the people that we've approved budget for already, and I don't want them camping on the side of somebody's desk, but it may be that they'll have to go up there for the first year.
I thought the idea was we simply don't go for the expensive items. You take the desk from here, you stick it up there, you leave the window, you've got a chambers, and you don't build a wall, but we basically create an office
Fair enough.
here.
Yeah,
I mean,
open space
there's things that
up
we
there.
can do that are much more cost efficient in the short term to see how it all goes.
They give us what we
And-
want.
And if we're talking about a contract planner, maybe, after the first year, then you decide, okay, do we need another year?
Yeah.
If yes, then, and you figure out.
So you're
how
saying
things
we
work, so-
could get away with not spending any of that office renovation number?
So
I'm not
that's
saying
41
any,
grand.
That's 41
there's
grand, right?
Certainly the wheelchair accessibility part of it, we would have to do.
Yes, we would have to do that.
And the
And the
lock-in
fireproof
cabinet.
safe we would need.
We need that in any event.
That would be imprudent not to have. I thought we had one, to be honest.
My only thing is avoid tax increase. That's what we're
Okay,
trying
well,
to do.
we're trying to get
All
there.
right, well, we're gonna crunch the numbers, but we're almost there now.
So what's the alarm system cost, the TBD?
It'll be minor, I think.
Okay, fine.
We're just having trouble getting anyone to give us a quote, but they're usually, it's just a monthly fee.
Unlike others, I think maybe this is not the year that we do the fire truck reserve, but guess what? Every council since time began said that, so that's why we don't have a fire truck reserve. But okay, maybe this is going to be one of those years again. The memorial, I believe we have to do it. This is the year, this being the centenary of the end of the First World War. Maybe it's not $10,000, maybe it is community funded.
Well, I think there's, we're looking at having fundraisers from within the community, and we've also found that there is a grant that'll match 50% up to 50,000. So if we can fundraise for 50,000, maybe we can get another 50, and then we've got a real whiz-bang project.
Do you know this grant, Pam? Is it in fact, will it match community?
It's 50%.
It doesn't have to be municipal spend, it can be community donations.
No, it has to be 50%, I believe, of cash spent.
regardless of
by the
size.
municipality.
Mhm.
Well, we can still
50%
take donations and
expenditures.
spend them as a municipality, so that's still doable. But yeah, okay, so we could potentially take that 10 grand out.
Well,
Sorry.
it's a way down the road, there's no concept, no idea, there's still a freaking water tank there.
Well, the water tank's gone by September. Anyway, we'll
Next
discuss
year.
that more when we
Okay.
get to the thing, because that's all, the thing being the stairs.
So I think doing this, we've already hit the zero, subject to some minor modifications and the bun fight on the stairs.
Is that so?
Pretty close.
Yes.
Yeah?
I mean, enough so that Pam can come back, and I'm sure it's gonna be zero.
So that is the recommendation from council, is 0%?
I th-
Or is we're leaning towards 0%?
It's got nothing to do with the fact that there's an election this year, of course.
No, not at all.
Not at all. But I think the point I would make is we have done 25% already.
Which is why we've gone from 11,000 to 14,600 on a 1 point increase.
So some in the audience will appreciate this. We are the second highest tax plus fees municipality in BC. Tax plus fees. That is because our water is incredibly expensive to make, and we'll see that when we get to the bylaw. Water is 3 times the price here than it is anywhere else in BC. But be that all as it may, it costs a lot of money to run this place. Second highest in the province, I'll just say that again. West Van's the first. So I think that's plenty. We should be able to work within those bounds. Okay, so does that give you enough, Pam, for now? So the motion would need to be receive the report.
Did you wanna do the, park this for a minute and do the stairs and come back?
Is that next?
It's close up.
Is it?
You could jump to number 4, 8,
We could, okay, well, we'll need unanimous consent to change the order of the reports, but I'm sure I'll take a motion on that to go in a second.
Strongly recommend.
All in favour of
Yeah.
moving the request for decision report, which is currently number 4 on the agenda, to number 2 on the agenda, and moving the other ones down?
Yeah.
I need hands. It needs to be unanimous. That carries unanimously. The new one before, request for decision, move to number 2. Okay, so that is the on-table report.
It is going.
For those in the audience, it looks like this. So now this is your report. Hit us.
So essentially, based upon requests by the mayor, I've approached the engineers for the water tank project, and they see a lot of potential cost savings. The builders for the tank will be doing concrete demo for the stairs. They'll be doing concrete forming, concrete steel work, etc. for the stairs.
For the
Could be
tanks.
for the tanks, could be incorporated for the stairs. So there's a lot of potential savings if we incorporate it into the water tank project. The only issue with that is tender is going out on next week on the 13th of February. In order to tender the stairs as part of that project, we need engineering drawings, and that's what this budget request is for. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, thanks. Good nutshell. So, not to hold you to this, but what is your professional estimation of what stairs might cost as built as part of a much bigger project? He's going to say somewhere between 0 and 80,000.
Yeah, my gut is around 40 to 50,000 would be a reasonable estimate as a tack on to a major capital project.
And this is for poured in place, last forever, gold plated, obviously.
So this would
Stairs.
be using your high number, the 50 plus the 8,
Correct.
60.
Yeah,
Saves us 20.
that's my conservative.
Yeah.
60, of which TransLink would
The
cough
transit
up.
would be reduced.
TransLink puts in half of what we put in. So if it's a 60,000, we would need to put in 30. TransLink would put in 30.
Of which we have already put in, how much again, Pam? 40.
40 into the budget.
No, we've already
There's
No,
no
we
rebudget
put
on
in
this.
nothing.
No,
There's no
no,
rebudget, this is
no.
new, that's right, sorry, big.
And would they cover the engineering costs, the TransLink? I'm not sure.
They would cover the entire project cost.
Including, okay,
Yeah.
fantastic.
So
So
the 40
the
becomes
question
30.
is, I just want to
Sure.
clarify for myself. So you're saying you want to include the stairs in the February 13th tender,
Correct,
and you want to try and get engineering for the stairs done in 8 days.
correct.
I think that
that's
probably-
going to delay the tender.
Well, we're going ahead with the 13th, and I've had confirmation that it's doable.
Okay.
They will be working the weekends for this one.
Well, as I have said,
So-
only half facetiously, the design brief's pretty simple. See them stairs, replace them. There, design's done. Okay, I know it needs to be drawn up.
We can't replace those stairs the way they are. They don't meet code.
Well, I hope they're going to be really nice and uniform tread and proper handrails and actually achieve the goal, which is why TransLink wants to fund them, which is pedestrian access to a bus stop for all ages, including kids. How kids don't fall down those stairs every morning, I don't know.
Considering how they were built, they've lasted an amazing amount of time. Because
Absolutely.
they're just sitting on a slope, and there's nothing really there holding them in place except themselves, so.
Is that true, Mr. Mayor?
What, that they're sitting there and nothing holding them? Just put it into perspective, the individual who built the stairs, his name was Brian Johnston, he used to be a resident of the community. When the works were done after the debris torrent, there were no stairs there at all, none. And we managed to, probably Bernice managed, I'll rephrase that, to get the provincial government to fund stairs. I don't know who designed them, I can't tell you. I know Brian built them. I don't remember the exact figure, but it seems to me that the funding amounted to $6,000 to put things in a perspective. So now you're talking $80,000 to replace them.
Well, frankly, that 6,000 is more than I would have expected to hear, and it's no longer 80; it's potentially 60. So what we're asking for is council approval of a spend of $8,000. That's an $8,000 sprat to catch a whale. The whale, which is 60 all in, an extra $54,000 for stairs, and that's ultra conservative. I'd suggest your $40,000 number is probably right, because these guys are going to be forming up like crazy. They're going to have a full crew. They're going to have metal
Traffic
bending on site.
Everything.
Yeah. How will we handle access while the stairs are demolished?
We haven't gotten to that point of the construction process. That'll be discussion with the
But temporary
contractor.
access, temporary railings, something will have to be built, right?
Not sure. Can't comment on that yet.
Because it will be during school time. So kids, well, everybody, and even during the middle of the summer, people go down there to catch the bus. Okay, maybe that's the level of details. So let's have a motion then. If I'm seeing nods around the table, we'll need a motion and a second to approve the expenditure of up to $8,000 for the engineering design work to prepare a tender-ready drawing for the pedestrian stairs on Lions Bay Avenue between Harvey Creek Bridge and Highway 90 Main Underpass. Is that a motion? Jim, thank you. And a second on that one? Fred, you look uncertain.
Well, I keep looking at that $8,000 figure, and I think, how could you generate $8,000 for coming up with a plan for building stairs? It's just, to Doug's point, that, you know, granted that was, 30-some odd years ago, the whole things were built for 6, but I just think, somebody goes out there, has a look at the thing, makes a few, sketches and diagrams and everything, they get the grade right, they get the slope right and all that. I get that, takes a bit of time, but $8 grand? What are they making on this thing?
This is AECOM.
This is AECOM, and the $8 grand is the conservative max that they came up with. So,
Okay, well, I don't think we can start second-guessing their unit rates now because they're doing all our other design work. So presumably this is fair.
it's for the creation of drawings and the verbiage required for the tender package.
And stamping it, of course. So this is
Stamping,
some engineer is putting their license on the line.
These are issued for construction drawings,
Yeah, they will be issued into the tender
It's the
package.
full Monty, right?
so they're not just tender drawings.
Yeah.
That's correct, right? Now. These are construction drawings.
Yes.
And will it include as-built after the fact, or is that part of the
Yes,
project
all of
cost?
their work will include as-built after the fact.
And our hope is that because there is potential savings, we really won't know until we put it out to tender and then see what the quotes are that come back. and we still don't have to choose that. So I guess there's a slight gamble in case those quotes come back higher than the 80 that's already been quoted. But this work we have, we could also pass on. We would have ownership to it, or could we?
Yeah, so what
Pass it on
Pam's
to-
referring to is if we choose, once the tenders come in and we see the breakout for the stairs, if we choose not to go for the stairs, we could still use the engineered drawings and the tender verbiage to go out to
Separate tender, yeah.
separately to see if we could get better prices through different contractors.
Like our hope is it will come in lower because they've identified economies of scale.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, then
And there's no debate about the type of construction. This is poured in place, formed stairs. We're not talking about prefab, we're not talking about metal, wood.
No, this is,
What's the evaluation process that we went through to determine that?
there isn't an evaluation process. Time is our enemy here. We don't have the time to review. So basically, one of the estimates we received, the 80,000 estimate, was for using pre-constructed treads, stair treads, and basically building a set of stairs with landings, using these Lego type pieces.
Like a giant wall.
Yeah, correct.
And would that take? Yeah, I can see that. That would be able to do the bend around the corner, or would you be talking about straight pieces?
No, basically it's a single tread.
Oh, single tread.
And you basically
not flights.
Lego it together and then build a landing and Lego some more together. That estimate is $80,000. This is for formed in place
Yep.
with steel.
Far more substantial. Yeah, I just don't buy the 80,000 under any set of circumstances. So I'd want to get a different number anyway. So we have a seconded motion on the table now. Any further discussion on that one? So let's call the question. All in favour? And opposed? That carries. Okay, so you can handle this time-wise now. You've assured us. Thanks for that.
Text
So,
right now.
Mayor, to go back to the budget then on this number,
Yeah.
between everybody else at the table, I'm just a numbers piece, so I'm in for the project because it's 50 dollars with TransLink, so, it's a big driver here.
I think that's right. So I think we're probably good on that one, right? 50 is a better number than 80. Of course, we don't want to raise anybody's expectations. That's the bid that we're looking to see. So how do we handle that part?
Go with the 50 plus the 8 for 58, let's call it 60, and a 30 on here, which reduces the 40 to 30.
Yeah.
And waiting for the best next piece of information.
Okay, fine.
And that it's us short of the to be determined almost at a flat budget.
Now, we may have gotten ahead of ourselves. Did we receive the report that Pam provided for us? No. So how do we handle that now? Can we receive it now?
Received as amended.
I thought it was tabled, wasn't it tabled?
Okay, let's say that it was tabled. I think that's probably as good as any. So now we'll take it off the table and a motion to receive the preliminary budget supplemental items. Thanks. I saw one and a second. Thanks. And any further discussion on that one? All in favour of receipt and opposed? That carries. So that takes off the first two pieces on the report section of 8A. And so now we'll go back to the changed order, and that is now the Office Coordinator, Consent to MVRD, Regional Park Service Amendment Bylaw number 1255. The report is in front of you. I trust we read it at the level of detail that you wanted to. It's fairly voluminous. Just speaking as our nominated Director to Metro, this is a piece of housekeeping which essentially is involved in the City of Abbotsford taking on the responsibility for its parks, which was previously under the Metro Park function. Abbotsford, as you know, is not part of Metro Vancouver, but their parks were. So that's all it was. The slightly strange wording of the resolution at the end, which is by providing consent on behalf of the electors of the village of Lions Bay. Peter, you want to just tell us what the authority is for that?
That's basically in accordance with the Local Government Act and the way in which electoral areas and municipalities who are members of a service provided by a regional district. And for certain circumstances, depending on what's being done, the electoral area director or the municipality, as the case may be, may pass a resolution to provide consent for something to do with the service, and they consent on behalf of the electors, essentially their constituents. So it's a permitted procedure under the Local Government Act, and that's why it's worded that way.
Okay, so it's slightly distinct from a resolution of council. It's providing, it's an alternative to going to referendum?
Essentially, yeah, you're basically, you're short-circuiting the direct electoral consent for a particular measure.
Okay. Right, so,
So there is additional information. I did follow up with the finance officer for Metro and to find out what the financial considerations were for Lions Bay or what the impact would be. Because there's, on the one hand, there's the reduction in the operating costs for not having to look after these parks. On the other hand, there's the loss of 100,000 taxpayers to pay for all of the parks. I thought it was going to come out as a net zero or close to that. It ends up being about $200 to $300 more for Lions Bay on an annual basis. Basically for this year is the expectation. Going forward, he didn't really know at this point. They haven't really plugged in all the numbers yet. So, so there's a slight increase in Village of Lions Bay's contribution to this service as a result.
yeah, and that's correct. And as you can imagine, the larger municipalities who attract a much higher regional district levy are not so sure they like this. But it's unfortunately something of a done deal from what I understand, although consent of the electors is required. So we are speaking on behalf not only of council, under the authority granted council, but on behalf of the electors today. So bear that in mind as you consider. I thought that's interesting. Financial implications if the board approves, the board being the Metro Board, the financial implications include reduction of the annual budget, a reimbursement from the Fraser Valley. So they don't actually say what's going to happen, and you found out. Okay, so good for that. Thanks for that. So it's not insubstantial. Our regional district levy is today, Pam? It's about $35 a house. 35 times 500 is
15 grand.
15 grand. So it's $300 on 15 grand. So it's not the end of the world, but it is more rather than less. We need a motion on this one. Is that a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Moved by Councillor McLaughlin, seconded by Councillor Bain. Discussion? Going, gone? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favour and opposed? That carries. And the final item under reports is the Public Works Manager Clean Water Wastewater Fund verbal update.
So essentially, with the approval of the stairs, we are good to go. We'll have the design package ready for the 13th, including the tender documents. Public Works staff will be reviewing the upgrades and the design changes, including the control valve, as of tomorrow, and with a turnaround date of 1 day to review.
Good stuff. And remind us when you expect bids back on the tender process.
We hope to have bids back on the 21st of March. So we're opening the tender up for 5 weeks, I believe.
Yeah. Will that be before or after budget approval, Pam?
Well, depending, right around the time we're adopting the budget?
Yeah.
Or going for second reading?
There's no budget implication though. This will all be loan funded, will it not? From the village's perspective.
Aside from the stairs, yeah.
Yeah, so we won't actually know the final number on the stairs unless we defer budget discussion, budget approval.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we'll just bear that in mind as the time comes. Okay, thanks. Anything else on that one?
No.
Okay, motion to receive that report and a second. Any discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. We'll now move on to 2 information reports from the Mayor. That is me. I don't propose to go through them word by word. A, because I know all the words, and B, because there's no need. So the first is just an update on the highway situation, just to bring everybody up to speed. The salient point here is on the first page of the report, and that is that the demand, as measured by the number of hours spent on calls by Lions Bay Fire, is less than half in 2017 what it was in 2016. Don't know why. We don't know if it represents a trend. It's a single data point. It may be a blip. It may be a complete reversal. But certainly they spent just close on 40 hours on calls on the highway in 2017 when they spent almost 100 in 2017. It's a welcome development, obviously, but why, we don't know yet. Is it the new concrete barrier? Don't know. The fire chief reports that they had a sort of around dozen calls from hitting the new barrier, whereas before they would have gone over a median and maybe not resulted in a call, or maybe would have. But no change. So don't know. That same information is reflected in the trend line. As you can see, it's heading down. We only started getting the data that we could use to track this in 2014, but as you see, it was around 50% of Lions Bay fire rescue time was spent on the highway. That trended up quite seriously to the extent that I was getting quite worried about it, and that's when I started really getting with the Ministry of Transport on what we could do on the highway. Now it's trending down, but whether that's a long-term trend or not, I can't tell.
So I look further into this thing and I see they're talking about an increase of 10 kilometers in our stretch of highway.
Increase of what?
Increase of speed.
I look make reference to it in here somewhere.
They do. And the thing is that what bothers me with that is that it's a well-established fact that every 5 kilometers over 60K doubles the risk of accident and significantly increases the damages from fatalities to, or up to a fatality level. And so that's what, like, maybe I'm a little negative on this kind of stuff, but I look at this kind of trend and these reports, and they're meant to justify what they want to do, and that's the public pressure is to increase the speed on Sea to Sky Highway wherever they can, especially in the village of Lions Bay.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. The change from 60 to 70.
That's right. So 60 to 70, that's 10K. That's 2 times increases, significant increases in the doubling of the accident.
But here's the thing, Jim. Let me just cut you off right there.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing 60. They're not even doing 70.
Okay.
They are doing, if you look at the graph just below there, the 85th percentile, that's the majority of drivers, are doing somewhere between 90 and 110 through Lions Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So the 60 is irrelevant. Nobody's doing it.
Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay.
For the governance guy, you're sure expecting a lot of leeway. Go. Did you want to say something?
I'm just saying, I was one of the few that honors the speed limit. It's very important.
Well, yeah. Now, as we all know around this table, 60 may be a little pokey, but 70 is about right for our sight lines, our bends, our ramp lengths, camber, all that stuff. And so, the thinking at Modi behind removing the 60 and going from 90 to 70 back to 90 is to provide something that may be more believable, because nobody believes 60, and maybe more people will follow 70. In other words, the hope is they will slow down, not speed up.
These are the same guys that gave us context-sensitive engineering for the highway design.
True. What we have today is not working. And so, as you all very well know, as endorsed by Council, I'm advocating for every speed over distance technology. This is, as I think you probably, if you watch the media, some of it anyway, is gaining traction now. And there was a national radio piece on yesterday. Quite a few inquiries arose out of that. The mayor of Squamish has really sort of taken this on, and so we're working this together now. So it's quite possible that we would get a pilot at Lions Bay that works extremely well to get people to slow down. There's no doubt, don't get me wrong, people need to slow down. That is proved by our accident stats, which are, as you see, fatalities are 3 times what they should be, and injury accidents and property damage only accidents are twice what they should be, just on the stretch to Lions Bay. Actually, subsequent to this report, I found a method to map accidents, which I have data for, and they're concentrated around Lions Bay in the whole stretch.
So, my whole point is the difference from 60 to 70K through Lions Bay is about 30 seconds.
Yeah, but people are doing 90 to 110.
No, but I'm just saying, that difference is 30 seconds, okay? So the thing is that they're saving, like, the idea is they're gonna save 30 seconds by speeding, okay? They're not saving anything really at the end of the day, except increasing the accident rate. That's my whole point. I won't say another word.
Who's not saving?
No, but the thing is that when people speed, they speed because they're in a hurry to get there. We know the road to Whistler is fraught with speeding because people are in a hell of a hurry to get to Whistler for their dinner appointment or their golf appointment. So the reality is, we went through this for 8 years, the design of the highway process and the speed process around it. And a lot of people were really adamant about the 60K speed limit because we had a lot of accidents, because we got a lot of residents coming on and off the highway, a very dangerous highway. And nobody seems to pay attention to that. They're only paying attention to, well, we've had accidents, we've had fatalities because of this or because of that. Well, I just think that we don't want to be too light on this, that's all. And we need to stick to our guns a little bit if we can.
Carl, page 64, which is the synthesis of the wish list, of which your input is only part of this. The letter to Modi. So in your view, what is the timing for dispatch, the timing for acknowledgement of receipt, and the timing for discussion?
The short answer to your question is don't hold your breath.
Death by 1,000 cuts here.
Well, last time I asked the Mayor of Whistler where she was in the letter, she said, oh yeah, the letter. So I don't think it's high on her priority list.
Okay.
Yeah, the Mayor of Whistler has a slightly different view on things. She seems to think that there's customers in Vancouver and the place where they're going in Whistler, and she doesn't actually care much how they get there.
The reality is that once they've hit the stop lights in Whistler, they tend to slow down quite a lot. So she doesn't have a speeding problem in Whistler.
Precisely. What people fail to understand that this is not a freeway. It looks like one because it's got overpasses and ramps and everything, but it's a rural highway. So just to reiterate the point, yes, 60 would be nice, but nobody does it. Here's the go. There it is in black and white.
So we bury our head in the sand and say, okay, nobody's going to do it, so we're not going to ask for it.
Nobody's going to do what?
Nobody's going to bother doing 60, so we'll change the sign to 70.
With the thinking, the logic is, from what I understand, more people may believe it. Because people are driving through here saying, 60 on a freeway, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
Thank you for this report and your ongoing good fight. I motion to receipt.
Thank you very much. And a second? Any further discussion? All in favour, opposed, that carries. And so now we move on to a second report, simply a wrap-up of the 2017 experience on our new website. The numbers only started coming in June. So the numbers you see there are representative of only half a year's worth of traffic. I don't intend to belabor this either. 10 o'clock for extension.
Oh, that changed.
And hopefully we don't need it. So, it's a small service website that's happening more or less like it's supposed to. The thing that you might find the most interesting, or staff might, is this graph here, the one that shows where people land and where they go and where they leave. That's the one I always find the most useful in designing a site. And it shows a site that's well used. So I think that's probably what we expected to see. It also shows that most of our traffic is legitimate traffic. You will see sites that get hammered by service in Russia, Kazakhstan, Pakistan. They are being used for nefarious purposes. We are not. You'll see a few. There's people trying. Philippines, Brazil. You know, those are not legitimate users. They're notorious originations of spam traffic, of Trojan traffic, but we don't have a lot of it. So a motion to receive. And a second, any discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And then moving on to a many-numbered information report on community signage project update. Norm, this is your report.
Right, so all I did here was come up with some try and come up with a cohesive sort of theme for the signs that we're the signage report you put together has a lot of content, and I thought we could try and get some cohesive aesthetic going. So the idea is just to present a few different options, and either I'm not sure how we advance this. Do we try and do this design internally? Do we find a designer that does this sort of thing for a living to design signs for us? So there's a lot of things to consider. So this is just a starting point.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think what I'll do is take a motion and a second to receive the report, and then we can discuss before voting for receipt. Thanks. That's a motion. Is it, Fred?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. And a second. Okay, so let's have some discussion on that. Thanks, Norm. Good. I think I already responded in writing. So I have a suggestion on how we might take this forward most efficiently, and I wrote it down. I'm just looking for it. And this would need a resolution. So it's just for discussion now, and then a subsequent resolution if somebody would care to move it. Is that a member of council finalise the design and wording with staff, perhaps with the communications consultant, to plan the community consultation piece with a view to finalising the final sign order in concert with the parking sign order, which is anticipated shortly. So that's what would be my suggestion, is we sort of amalgamate all of this stuff, throw it up in the air, see what comes down, decide, and then have staff press the button.
Time to execution.
Well, I would think that if we could come up with a final design within a month, and production nigh is?
If you want to tie it into the parking signage,
Yeah.
at least 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah. So the idea is to have the parking signage up by mid-May. So that would be the answer to your question is mid-May completion, which is 2 months away.
Lots of time for
No,
consultation.
3 months away.
Too.
Yeah, this time for consultation. The consultation piece is important to me, and as you know, what I proposed to do was to do actual mock-ups of signs, full size, full color, to have people comment on them, and in some cases make choices, like for example between form and function, look and feel.
But this is a whole new concept for the village, and it's great. It looks good. One of these, somehow, if we can use this theme somewhere, it would be great. It would make a
Yeah, I
big
think
difference.
Norm's point was the right one, is that this is an opportunity to brand the village as whatever it is that our brand is, caring, welcoming, information heavy, information light, whatever it is that we want to do. I mean, we heard from a delegation that, there's an issue around educating hikers, for example. It's a technical term, so I feel justified in using it, not crap in our watershed, etc., etc. So that's where we stand. So there's a motion on the table to receive the report. Would we be amenable to calling the question? Yeah, that's good to go. So all in favour? For those who are favourable and opposed, that carries. So now, Peter, do you have any particular advice on how, my suggestion to do that resolution? With that?
Well, I'm just, I hate to sort of be the contrarian here, but I just wonder whether...
We love being the contrarian. What are you talking about? That's your job. You've never not been anything but contrarian. Okay, sorry.
I wonder if there's some value in taking what we've got so far and sending it off to somebody who does this stuff for a living to get some feedback. Yeah, there's a cost involved. I don't know what that cost is, but I think that, if we're going to do something like this, it's a big thing, and it could be a really good thing for the village. But if it's not done right, it could be, not a good thing. So
I'm very conscious of that.
I think that, it might not be a bad idea to get some feedback, get some pointers, get some suggestions, even if it's not a case of, okay, we're going to hire this person to do this. Well, we don't necessarily want to do that, but maybe we can explore getting some constructive feedback.
Are there such people?
I don't know.
Yeah, there are.
What's their profession? What's the field?
One of them is a graphic designer. The one that we use for West Van's wayfinding is John Gallup.
But are we talking about graphic design, or are we talking about function?
Both, I would suspect. These people do this for a living, and they review lots of different types of wayfinding and community signage, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is that we want the message to get across as best as possible in as few words as possible. Or not, as the case may be. Okay, I like that idea.
I like that idea.
Yeah, so let's have a motion in that regard then. So refer to a consultant budget. We have a $15,000 budget now.
It's already within the.
So within the budget,
so go.
yeah. So don't spend too much because we need it for poles and bolts and things like that. Okay, so
We're on
that's
a
a
speedy track here, I mean,
yeah.
This is gonna be one of these carry forwards for the next agenda.
Yeah, sure. But okay, so there's a motion. Can I have a second? And we know what we're going to be calling the question on, referring to a suitable, let's say, consultant. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
What does that say on your business card? Sign designer?
Well, exactly. That's why I asked. What do you call these people?
What do they work for
It's norm moonlighting.
Yeah.
Okay. I've lost track of where we are in the agenda. So
May I put forward the Beach Park Advisory Committee minutes for receipt?
Thank you. Anything you want to point out to us there?
The notes are detailed, a lot of the stuff synthesized. The survey results, we've had one meeting since then, we're another meeting on Thursday, whereupon the draft report will be fleshed out considerably more. I've seen a copy of it first, but I can see that it works within what budget is going to be given. So I think for next council meeting we'll be farther along on that one. I put forward a motion to receive.
Okay, thanks. And a second on that one. Any further discussion? So receiving the report, all in favour? Opposed? That carries. Okay, and there are no emergency services reports, so we'll move on past resolutions, there being none, to bylaws. And the first is 3 readings on the utility user rate amendment bylaws, 538, 539 and 540. We have to do these separately, I believe. Is that right, Peter?
I would advise it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's on page 119, if we can just turn there. I had one question, if I may. What is the difference between, why are condominiums charged the same as single-family residences, given they have no gardens? Has it always been like that?
We basically just pass on the actual costs. The garbage is collected differently for the condominiums.
No, this is water.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Water.
Water.
Page 122.
Yeah, 122. I mean, I'm really asking council, is this what we intend? These people, by definition, don't have gardens. They don't have pools. Is it fair?
The larger, well, the amount of water used by a townhome or a house with 3 people in it is going to be pretty close to the same thing, with the exception of the gardens.
Which is
And
seasonal.
pardon?
Seasonal.
Yeah, seasonal. And the thing is that we have made several attempts over the years to reduce the water required from our water system for gardens by introducing people to rainwater catchment and stuff like that. So the reality is that it's probably very close to the same, I would think, if you take the gardens out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not, nobody's mentioned this to me. I was just sort of flagged that, you know, $1,500 a property is quite a lot of money for water anyway. Well, while you're mulling on that one, are there any other businesses?
The business, it's the 3 at the store.
Oh, okay, the 3 separate ones at
Yeah.
the store all have water service, and that's what they pay. Okay, so it's such a minor component of the total water revenue that it doesn't even matter. Okay, so what's your pleasure? It's a motion to adopt as is. No changes.
Yeah.
Okay, and a second on that one. And any further discussion? So this is a motion to do first, second and third readings on the water rates and regulations amendment bylaw number 538 of 2018, which is effectively setting the rates. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And now moving on to sewer user rates bylaw number 122 of the 1984 amendment, bylaw number 539 of 2018. Same deal, setting the sewer user rate at $800.40 per user. This applies, of course, only to residences on the Kelvin Grove sewer system. What's your pleasure? Motion to adopt? A motion to do first, second, and third? I knew I was going to A, get it wrong, and get a glare. Damn it. That's not what I meant to say.
It's not a glare, it's a heart attack.
Yeah. First, second, and third, that is. That's a motion that I saw there. Thanks. And a second. Any discussion on this one?
Being as picky as the mayor with his gardening at the condos, Pam, could you explain the rationale for me for the differential and prompt payment for these different services ranging from 2 to 2.5 to 3.5?
We work backwards more from the dollar amount because it's such a higher fee to sort of work. Yeah, that's why
So
it's higher. The lower
it's
the
more
fee,
than
the higher
visual,
it
it's
is.
actually arithmetic.
Yeah, basically.
Thank you.
Didn't even see that.
Trying to do better.
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah,
put it this way, 3.5
You raised
on
the
water
bar.
would
You
be
raised the
too
bar.
much.
Oh, nitpickiness? Okay, fair enough. That was a very backhanded compliment, Councillor McLaughlin. Thank you. Okay, so there's a motion and second on this guy. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. First, second, and third reading on number 539. And opposed? That carries. And finally, garbage and recycling collection bylaw number 455 of 2013, amendment bylaw number 540 of 2018. Same again, setting the rates for the year. The marina takes care of its trash separately.
Yes,
Yeah. Including recycling,
yes.
because I know we supply the.
And
They
the
have a
school,
different.
and the school does as well.
And the
Once
school
we
does.
switched to waste control, they just negotiated their own separate contract, and it actually worked better for us as well.
Okay.
One of the reasons is for the flexibility, that once we bill the annual rate, that's pretty much the rate, whereas the school likes to be able to turn it off at March break, and at Christmas, they just can call up and say no collection. And the opposite with the marina, when they're busy, Ken has the ability to just call up and say, I need an extra garbage collection this week. But we couldn't do that because we couldn't incorporate that into the rate. So it was something that was mutual. I met with the school board last year, or not school board, but the superintendent at the school and Ken as well. And they were both fine with, because we don't mark the rates up, so it was no additional cost to them. It gave them that added flexibility to either turn the service off over the summer or turn it on.
Okay, good. So there was some thought applied there. That's great. So this is first, second, and third reading on this bylaw. Can I have a motion on that guy? And a second. Any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And request for decision on first, second, and third reading on the secondary suite surcharge bylaw number 513 of 2017, amendment bylaw number 536 of 2018. Which is in front of us, starting on the meat of it on page 132. Effectively just changing some definitions or tightening up on some definitions. So I had one, Peter, and that was on the definition of occupied.
I knew you would.
Yeah. Could we not say occupied means inhabited for periods of 1 month or longer within a calendar year, comma, or advertising for habitation or residency for periods of 1 month or longer within a calendar year? To clarify, because I read that thing about 5 times to say, what the heck does this mean? And is that what it means? Are we actually saying
So say it one more time.
you trigger occupied if you are advertising for habitation or residency for periods of 1 month or longer within a calendar year? So it's either inhabited or advertising for inhabitants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll work.
Or both.
Yeah, or both, yeah, sure. But that's what the or takes care of. But is that what we want? So just by advertising, you have an occupied secondary suite. And of course, advertising is a non-family member, so you trigger your $700 and something fee. Simply by advertising. Because you intend to rent it as soon as you can, presumably. Yeah, okay. So
I think your date of either occupancy or advertising is just a point in time. I mean, it's the year is the year kind of thing. So
that's right. This occupied trigger is triggered it's occupied. And the fee is due.
So it would read, occupied means inhabited for periods of 1 month or longer within a calendar year, comma, or advertising of a secondary suite for habitation or residency for periods of 1 month or longer within a calendar year. Is that right? Or you,
Well, I was thinking that of a secondary suite is not necessary, but I can live with that. Because we're talking about a secondary suite.
yeah, it's not even in the first half of the definition.
Exactly, so
anyways.
that's why I took it out the second.
Or advertising, or advertising for periods.
For habitation or residency for periods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're advertising for days, are you a short-term rental? And subject to a separate set of rules. You can't short-term rent a secondary suite. We don't allow that.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's not. You're talking about long-term rentals here, and you do the
yeah.
thing.
I don't
So
know
this
if we
covers
need-
off relatives coming to stay in your secondary suite. It's not occupied, right?
I don't know that we need the comma, but
Okay, well, I'll leave that to you. Okay, so that's all I have there. Is that true? Yes. Anybody else? Call for a motion on this guy and a second. Any further discussion? This is first, second, and third readings, right, Peter?
mm-hmm.
Okay. On some housekeeping items, really. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And the delegation bylaw adoption. This is delegation bylaw number 541 of 2018. As discussed last meeting and given 3 readings, this is the adoption. May I have a motion and a second? Any discussion? You all know what we're doing here? This delegates authority to CAO to negotiate up to terms resolved by council on the sale of 52 Brunswick Beach Road, which is the closed road end. Okay, ready for the question? All in favour? Opposed? It carries. Now I'm just going by the package now, so tell me if I'm getting the agenda wrong. Is it correspondence next? Yep. Okay. Okay, Ron, this is your baby.
G1, invitation to, I'm going to be using this phrase, mobility pricing, several times in this correspondence, so get used to it. Another mobility pricing workshop for council members, you can attend or not. It's posted here, no response on this one. G2, CTV News Inquiry, I believe this has been responded to, so thank you, Mayor Burr. No response. G3, Recycling Council BC Annual Zero Waste Conference. It's May 30th to June the 1st in beautiful, it's somewhere nearby, I forget where.
Yeah.
No response unless there's a desire to attend a Zero Waste Conference. I felt I did mine at the Waste Management Golf Tournament.
Same thing, yeah.
There we go, so no response from me. And cleverly disguised as mobility pricing, again, impact engagement background. This is a double down on the same request and giving you lots more information and knowledge. No response on that one. Shifting gears slightly to transit-oriented affordable housing study. Quite a good little piece here. The info on the topics provided by Metro. A good piece. I would suggest no response. Mayor Burr, if you've got any commentary you want to shed on this kind of topical piece.
Well, yeah, this has come up at the board, but Peter, I don't believe there's any ask here. This is not something that member municipalities have to approve, or this may become part of the OCP, or what's called the Regional Growth Strategy for regional districts, which we would have to ratify as a board, but I don't believe member municipalities have to ratify changes to the regional growth strategy. Is that right? No. So, yeah, as you say, yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So
they write a good report.
And lastly, and dear to my heart, the amending list of species under the Species at Risk Act. And knowing Councillor Bain's love for pink-footed shearwaters and Councillor Norm for rusty cord moss, which frequents his home, I think this is just another valuable piece of information. It's a request to contact the conservation planning people.
If you've got any comments, other than the people I've named, I presume there are none, so no response on that one.
Although I will just say that I want to point this out to the community, because there are people who care about these things.
It's cool stuff.
And they may want to get engaged, so I'm just going to make sure that they see this piece just in the agenda as is.
Well, therefore you want to go and do stuff, and I really don't want you live, but there you go. And on the resident piece, Wendy Morton, and I believe, Carl, you've already responded to this one, although it seems like a blur in many responses that you've done on this topic.
This one...
Page 170?
Yeah, this is a person in Souk who saw something I was doing on speed, and the reason that I found this one particularly interesting is that her MLA is John Horgan. So I asked her to give him a call, and apparently she did.
Good for her.
She knows him that well. So
there we go, and you're done.
Okay, thanks. So a motion to receive correspondence. Oh, okay, is that your motion?
No, I got a commentary on here, just on the side. You know, we had about 33. Yes, we had 33 pages. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Creatus, Octoglossus, or whatever it was. But we had 33 pages of correspondence, and 28 pages of that came from Metro. And I think, for goodness sake, they make their point and repeat it, and I suggest they cut down or we'll stick the tree huggers on them. I mean, this is crazy.
Oh, well, I'll mention it the next time I see them, which is actually tomorrow for 2 committee meetings. But it won't go anywhere. You know, they like doing this stuff.
They got people on top of people.
Yeah, people have people. So yeah.
I like to read everything in the agenda package, and I just think, oh, jeez, it's just dragging.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody else want to fess up that they didn't read that entire thing from Metro? Okay, I'll be perfectly honest, seeing it's my day to be honest.
Yeah, but you sit in the chair though.
Well, exactly, I did actually, to be fair, I did know about it.
Define reading.
When you're playing Pokemon.
I mean, I scan documents.
I mean, it's
I
like
pick out the relevant points. I try to.
There.
Whether I read them or not. I'm not
Yeah, no, well, I mean, you know, it's all good stuff. This is what governments do, but yeah, it is kind of voluminous. So, where are we?
New business?
New business.
New business. You got some? None tabled? Public questions and comments. 2 minutes. Anybody want to say something?
I think we have someone who would like to say something. Yeah?
Sure, please.
I am from the other side of the dog debate. I just wanted to come and make a... Sorry,
Sorry, can I just get your name, please?
Peter Smith.
Peter Smith.
Welcome.
How do you do? We just moved here. We did come for the welcoming bit. Unfortunately, we did make a slight error with the dog bylaw, which we unintentionally are breaking at the moment. It is a matter that's of very great importance to my family. And I just wanted to say that, come here, put a human face to our side of it. And also just to point out that it is actually a building site we are living next door to, and apparently disturbing. Not a house or a home or a domicile or anybody living there. And, you know, perhaps if Mr. Gordon would spend less time aggravating the dogs, banging, shouting and waving at them, they would bark less. And if he would call us ahead, perhaps we could even get the dogs indoors, so they didn't bark at all. That's all really I came to say, just to try and put a human face. I have spoken with Peter, and I know Peter will share some other things with you in more private circumstances.
Very good, thank you. Thanks for taking the trouble, and thanks for sitting through all of that. I know it's fascinating, but...
It's not like Beagles.
No, I agree with that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Anybody else?
I'd like to say something.
Yeah, please.
Just a couple of observations, and then to do with the
Doug
beach.
Pollock.
So, Doug Pollock, that's me. I noticed, I go down there periodically, I noticed there's seem to be a number of spaces where there were boats and racks that are no longer there. I noticed there was a sign up, I think somebody took them down, indicating that they were necessary to be registered. I don't have one, so it doesn't really affect me, but I wonder if somebody's taken some proactive measures to deal with that issue. Just a curiosity.
Yeah, there was a bylaw amendment to the Parks bylaw that allowed seizures for delinquent payment of rental spaces.
Right, so that's what's happened.
Yeah.
That's fine, that's just an observation, I'm just curious if that's what's happened. The second thing I'd comment on is there, as you go into the park from the marina, there, and I think there's more than one, there's a sign there that indicates, and this isn't a criticism necessarily,
but it indicates all the reasons why it's necessary to revitalize the park, which is an admirable goal. One of the reasons is that the posts on the shelter down by the beach are rotten and are impossible to replace. I can't remember the exact wording, but it basically said, can't be fixed. That's what the sign that's posted in the marina. Yet, when I go down, I see that somebody has in fact replaced those posts that were impossible to fix. And I just question, to me it just seems kind of odd to make a statement like that and then follow it up by actually fixing the impossible.
It could be the wording. The two posts on the back end
Yeah.
were replaced by Garth. The posts that are rotten that we can't replace without having to tear down the structure are the ones supporting the roof.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
So those are not posts, those are beams.
they're beams. Okay.
Could be the wording.
Okay, oh, that wording.
Yeah.
So there's a sign.
I'm not sure which
I think the
sign.
sign actually says posts, because I mean there's a
Yeah.
difference between posts and beams.
Yeah.
So my observation was that to me, I never looked at the beams, I have to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I looked at the posts and I realized they had deteriorated. I also realized that they really didn't constitute a hazard from my perspective.
Yeah.
And then I found they'd been replaced. So that brings us to our other question, of course, which is just an observation then. So if there's some movement to tear that thing down and put a bigger and better one, why would we bother replacing posts? Okay, enough said.
Okay, well, this is in Councillor McLaughlin's Ballywick, and I know that a lot of discussion has taken place on the gazebo, so I think we'll come up with a...
I'd like to add one comment to that. And when I grew up, I was raised by my dad, who told me very clearly, difficult things take a long time to do. The impossible, just a little bit longer. So that's obviously what's happened here. Someone's just taking a little bit longer to fix things.
It wasn't meant as a criticism so much as an observation, and
Yeah.
the fact that it's quite confusing to
Yeah.
read a sign and then
And it's
see the
taken,
action.
yeah, that's good.
We didn't mean those posts.
No.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Doug. Mr. Stone,
Thank you.
to nobody's surprise,
Before I start, can you just tell me why we have to replace the stairs up there? What's the reason for it? Before
it's in the report. And we're not going to go through it again. I think we've had enough on the stairs.
Oh, well, I would just offer a suggestion, because I don't know why the stairs are being replaced. You know, there's an expression, if Mohammed can't get to the mountain, bring
There's
the mountain
gaps,
to
they're
him.
crumbling, they're falling apart.
If it's about access to the bus, why not have the bus go up and pick the passengers up on that side of the stairs, rather than having to build stairs? But that's just a suggestion. Okay. I want to point out that increasing speed on the highway through Lions Bay would increase the accident rate for residents, because the entries, especially the one that I know of, southbound from Lions Bay Avenue, is a very, very, very short entry, and numerous times people just stop because there's too much traffic, and I would not like to see traffic moving faster on the highway because of the danger.
Well, can I just comment on that, because I see you have a list there, and so we'll go with the clock. The problem is the people coming by are doing 110,
Well, that
not 60 or 70.
has the village entertained hiring a bylaw officer, some police?
It's not within our purview, unfortunately. We have looked. Yeah.
Okay.
But just to finish off on that, that is one reason why it hasn't happened yet. The chief engineer of the Ministry of Transport has to sign off on the change, and one of the stumbling blocks, if that's the right term, is the ramp lengths.
Yeah,
So
yes, yeah.
it's not a done deal. But they all recognize, I'll just say this for a fifth or sixth time, because this is the drum that needs to be banged. Nobody's doing 60. So 60 is irrelevant. They're doing 110 or 90, depending. You know, the information has been measured very precisely. So what we actually have to do is get those people to slow down.
Well, we can get the RCMP to get out there more effectively.
Well, yeah.
But
So-
a couple more questions.
Sure.
One, just, does the village pay for garbage pickup?
In for
Yeah,
what?
For the village garbage cans throughout the village.
Yeah.
We do pay.
It's part of the contract, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more question, how do you account for charging people secondary suite charges when you have houses in Lions Bay being rented? where are occupied by a sufficient number of people, more than the case that someone who's just getting a secondary suite. So 2 people live in the main suite, 1 person downstairs, that's 3 people. You have rental houses where people, 4, 5, or 6 people in the house. And how can you, or have you considered that situation where people renting the whole house is,
Well,
you
the
know,
reason
so
I'm
someone-
smiling is because you missed the scintillating debate on this topic, where I was propounding exactly that. I didn't sway council in that regard, and so the secondary suite fee remains. I think you heard me referring to the can being kicked out down the road for another year. So I suspect that council will revisit that situation. But yeah, that is one of the things that I pointed out. There's no logic to it.
no, okay, thank you.
Thanks very much for those comments. And with that, I'll thank everybody for attending, and I'll take a motion to close the meeting under 91I, A, C, E, F, and K. That's the motion, and a second. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. Do we need a short recess?
Just a couple minutes, yeah?
Peter's pricked his ears up. Okay, returning from the closed portion of the meeting at 11:25 p.m., still on Tuesday, luckily, and that is a few items to report out. The first is that the listing agreement for sale of the 52 Brunswick Beach property owned by the municipality has council has agreed to renew for 6 months. A second item to report out is that the CAO annual review was undertaken. Good time was had by all, and that, I believe, is it for items to report out of the closed meeting. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the regular meeting, and a second. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. Meeting adjourned.
Done.